Pharaoh's Lost Tomb. Imagine stepping into a desert dawn, the air cool against your skin, as you approach a lone pyramid. The rising sun casts long shadows across its weathered stones, and there, half buried in sand, you see a narrow, dark opening you've never noticed before. Your heart skips a beat. What if that entrance leads to a chamber no living soul has entered in 3,000 years? The idea is at once thrilling and uncanny, like finding a forgotten room in your childhood home that holds memories you never knew existed. Which mystery startled you most? Share where you'd explore first in the comments. Just as a rainy day can hide a path, these buried clues await discovery. These enigmas touch belief, language, even how our minds seek patterns. Ancient AI of
human curiosity. If these secrets stirred your imagination, like and subscribe for more gentle deep dives. Your next journey into the unknown begins tonight.
Picture yourself gently pushing aside the stone slab that seals the doorway. A soft cloud of dust drifts up, and your footsteps echo in the stillness. Inside, the walls are lined with silent sarcophagi, stone coffins carved with the faces of kings and queens long gone. The air is cool and heavy, carrying the faint scent of ancient oils and resins once used to preserve the body. It feels like time itself has paused within these walls, waiting for someone to awaken its secrets. Have you ever opened a door you thought was locked forever? Maybe it was an old journal hidden in your drawer, or a photo album in the attic. At first you hesitate. What will you find? Will it change how you see your past? That same mix of excitement and nervousness fills you now, standing before those sealed chambers. You know you might uncover treasures, gold masks, jewels, finely painted walls. But you also wonder what stories, what sorrows, lie entombed in the silence. As you move deeper into the tomb, your torchlight reveals faded paintings on the walls, scenes of daily life, farmers tending fields, craftsmen shaping metal, priests chanting in shadowed temples. These images were meant to guide the pharaoh in the afterlife, but they also offer a window into a world long vanished. It's a reminder that people centuries ago laughed, loved, and worried about the same things we do now: family, food, safety, meaning. The bright colors have dimmed, yet their message still shines through. We were here, we mattered, you. Pause at one sarcophagus, its lid carved with the likeness of a young ruler wearing a ceremonial beard and crown. There's a crack along the edge, as if someone tried to peer inside centuries ago. Who were they? A tomb robber in search of gold? A priest seeking a vision? Or perhaps an early explorer driven by wonder as you are now? The crack speaks of human curiosity, our timeless urge to look beyond the surface, even when told to leave things alone. In that quiet chamber, you feel a strange kinship with those ancient souls. You realize that exploring a lost tomb is more than unearthing artifacts. It's about connecting across time, sharing a moment with people whose names have faded but whose hopes and fears remain familiar. It's the same impulse that drives us to read old letters or listen to elders' stories. We seek to understand where we come from, to feel less alone in the vast march of history. Yet there's a paradox here. By entering the tomb, by disturbing its stillness, you alter it forever. The dust you kick up will never settle exactly the same way. The quiet you break will echo for future visitors. In trying to preserve the past, we inevitably change it. This is true not just in archaeology, but in our own lives. When we revisit old memories, an old diary entry, a childhood home, we can never step back into them unchanged. Our presence, our perspective, reshapes what we find. Think about a memory you've revisited recently. Maybe you walked past your old school or reconnected with a childhood friend on social media. The place or person is the same, yet you see it differently now. Your feelings have changed. Your understanding deepened. In that sense, every act of exploration is also an act of creation. As you shine light into the Pharaoh's lost tomb, you create new meaning from ancient stones. What does this tell us about our own search for meaning? We often look for answers in the distant past: family roots, cultural origins, ancient wisdom. We hope to find something solid to hold on to, but the act of searching changes us as much as the answers change our view of history. We become participants in the story, not just observers. The Pharaoh's tomb, once sealed and silent, becomes part of our own journey toward understanding. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever rediscovered something from your past? A letter, a place, a memory that changed how you see yourself? Share your experience in the comments. Let's build a community of explorers who connect across time, learning from the echoes of those who came before us. If this journey into the Pharaoh's lost tomb stirred your curiosity, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us uncover more hidden doors, both in ancient sands and in our own lives. Together, we'll continue to explore the mysteries that remind us we are part of a much larger story, one that stretches across millennia and unites us all in our shared search for meaning and connection. Solar boat rituals. Imagine standing beside a silent pyramid under a silver moon. The night air is still, and the sands glow faintly in the moonlight. Then you notice a strange shape half buried in the sand, a full-sized wooden boat carefully laid to rest beside the tomb. It feels as though someone planned a midnight voyage, not across water, but into the realm beyond life itself. Why would ancient kings bury boats by their pyramids? Did they truly expect to sail into the afterlife under moonlight? Centuries ago, Egyptians believed that the sun god Ra traveled across the sky by day in a golden boat, then journeyed through the underworld by night in a solar bark. Pharaohs, seen as earthly embodiments of Ra, needed their own vessels to join him. So near the Great Pyramid, archaeologists uncovered a full-scale solar boat, its 43-meter length carved from cedar, plank by plank, sealed in a pit. It lay undisturbed for thousands of years, as if waiting for its captain to return and board under a rising moon. Have you ever planned for something you might never see? Think of saving money for a dream trip you hope to take one day. You set aside, each month, imagining the moment you finally arrive. Yet you might never go, and still you prepare. The solar boat is like that, a grand plan for a journey no living person will ever make. It's a powerful paradox, building for a future self you cannot be sure exists. That same tension appears in our lives. We study late for exams, hoping our future selves will reap the rewards. We invest time in relationships, imagining the life ahead. We save for retirement, picturing a peaceful sunset. We plan, even though the future is unknown. The Egyptians built their boat for a voyage beyond death. We build our dreams for journeys we may never take. Both acts spring from hope and faith in what lies ahead. This simple idea bridges to bigger themes. It shows how belief shapes action, whether belief in an afterlife or belief in our own potential. It speaks to language too, the way we use stories and symbols like boats and journeys to express hopes we cannot fully explain. It touches mental health. Planning for tomorrow can bring comfort, yet sometimes anxiety when the future feels uncertain. And in our age of AI, we program machines for tasks they haven't yet performed, trusting code to guide unknown journeys, much like the cedar planks of the solar bark. As you imagine that boat under the moon, consider your own voyages. What are you building today for a tomorrow you can't see? Maybe it's skills, memories, or connections. Maybe it's a simple habit, like writing in a journal each night, meant to guide your future self. Share in the comments. What dream boat are you preparing for? Where are you hoping it will carry you? If this glimpse of ancient moonlit rituals spoke to your own hopes, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us continue these calm, thoughtful journeys through history and the human heart, one soft, guiding light at a time. Sphinx Hidden Chamber. Imagine standing before the great Sphinx at dawn, its majestic lion's body half-bathed in gold light. You feel the weight of its gaze, ancient, unreadable, as if it knows secrets you do not. Then you notice something odd, a small sealed doorway beneath one paw, half concealed by centuries of sand. Your heart quickens. What lies beneath the paws of that silent guardian? A hidden chamber, untouched for thousands of years, waiting to share its story. You crouch and brush away the sand, The stone is cool under your fingertips. The entrance is narrow, just big enough for one person to slip through. You pause, imagining what might be inside. Walls carved with lost hieroglyphs, treasure chests of incense and gold, or perhaps nothing but empty air. It's like finding a forgotten drawer in your home, one you never knew existed. You wonder, what if your childhood attic held a secret door behind a dusty trunk? The mix of excitement and uncertainty is impossible to ignore. Have you ever opened a door you thought was locked forever? Maybe it was an old journal you rediscovered or a message from a friend you lost touch with. The moment you peel back the cover or press play, you feel both thrill and fear. What if the past isn't what you remember? The Sphinx's hidden chamber is that moment writ large, a doorway into a past that has been silent for millennia, now calling out to be heard. As you squeeze through the opening, the air shifts. It's cooler here still, as though time moves more slowly inside. Your flashlight beam dances across rough walls, revealing faint carvings, shapes that might be hieroglyphs or simply the marks of time. You realize that even if the chamber holds no treasure, its true value is the glimpse it offers into ancient minds. Whoever built this had a purpose, a ritual space, a secret library, or a guard post for the Pharaoh's spirit. That purpose connects you across time to people who thought, felt, and hoped, much like you do now. This simple act, discovering a hidden room, mirrors moments in our own lives. We all have parts of ourselves that remain unseen, buried under years of routine and expectation. Maybe it's a passion we set aside, a memory we tucked away, or a dream we never shared. When we finally open that inner door, we feel the same mix of awe and vulnerability as the explorer beneath the Sphinx. We step into a space that has been waiting just for us. The paradox is clear. The Sphinx was built to guard and to reveal, to stand silent yet invite discovery. It reminds us that mysteries can be both protective and enlightening. In our own lives, we may shield parts of ourselves out of fear, yet those hidden parts often hold our greatest insights. Just as the Sphinx's chamber lies beneath its watchful gaze, our inner truths lie beneath our everyday personas, waiting for the courage to uncover them. This idea bridges to larger themes. It speaks to belief in hidden worlds, whether spiritual, psychological, or digital. It touches language, the carved symbols that may one day speak to us if we learn their code. It echoes mental health, the value of exploring the hidden corners of our minds, gently and with care. And it even hints at AI, where layers of code lie beneath user interfaces, shaping experiences in ways we barely perceive. So here's an invitation. Think of one hidden chamber in your own life. Perhaps a skill you've never tried, a memory you've never revisited, or a conversation you've postponed. Share it in the comments. What door will you open next? Let's build a community of explorers, each revealing a bit more of what lies beneath. If this journey under the Sphinx stirred something in you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us unearth more hidden chambers, both in ancient monuments and in our own hearts. Together, we'll continue to shine gentle light into the places waiting to be discovered. Mirror magic spells. Imagine holding a polished silver disc under the soft glow of an oil lamp. Its surface gleams like liquid moonlight, yet when you gaze into it, you don't see your own reflection. You see shapes shifting at the edge of vision. Ancient priests called these scrying mirrors, believing they could catch nightmares or summon distant gods. The idea is both familiar and strange. We all know our reflection in a mirror, yet this mirror promises to reveal what lies beyond everyday sight. Think of a rainy night when you catch your reflection in a window. At first you see yourself clearly. Then, as the lightning flashes, you glimpse something behind you. A shadow, a memory, a face you thought you'd forgotten. That momentary surprise is the same thrill ancient seers felt when they used mirror discs in quiet temples. They wondered, is this just a trick of light or a doorway to another realm? These ritual mirrors were simple, often bronze or obsidian, polished until they shone like dark water. A priest or seer would sit alone, holding the disc, focusing until the surface seemed to swirl, Sometimes they claimed to see gods, ancestors, or visions of the future. Other times they saw nightmares, fears given shape in the dim reflections. The same tool could comfort or terrify, depending on what the viewer brought to it. Have you ever stared at your own reflection long enough to see something more than skin and eyes? Maybe you saw sadness you didn't expect, or a flicker of hope. Mirrors show us what we want to see and what we fear. The ancient mirror discs amplified that paradox. They were both tools of revelation and instruments of mystery. They asked their users to believe that a simple disc could bridge the known and unknown. In our daily lives, we use mirrors without a second thought, checking our hair, adjusting our clothes, making sure we look presentable. Yet we rarely consider the mirror's deeper power, its ability to make us face ourselves. The ritual mirror took that idea further. It turned reflection into revelation. It asked people to look not just at their faces, but at their souls. This simple practice connects to larger themes. It speaks to belief that objects can hold power, that symbols can open doors to hidden worlds. It touches language. The word mirror comes from roots meaning to wonder or to admire, reminding us that reflection is tied to thought. It echoes mental health, the way we confront or avoid our own fears when we see them, reflected back. And in the age of AI, it reminds us that any interface, a screen, a mirror-like algorithm, can become a window into deeper truths or hidden biases, depending on how we use it. I invite you to try a small ritual of your own. Tonight, find a mirror in soft light. Look not just at your face, but at the thoughts that rise as you gaze. What do you see beyond the surface? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a gentle community of reflection and discovery. If this glimpse into ancient mirror magic stirred your curiosity, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us continue these calm journeys through history and the human mind, one soft reflection at a time. Cursed gold masks. Imagine finding a mask made of pure gold, so bright it glows even in the dark. It lies perfectly shaped like a human face, cold and still, placed on the skull of someone long gone. You reach out, drawn to its beauty, but just before you touch it, a strange feeling washes over you. It's as if the mask is watching you, or warning you. What if this shining face, once worn in death, now carries a curse no one can see? Gold has always fascinated people. It doesn't rust, it doesn't fade, and it shines like sunlight even after thousands of years. In ancient times, kings and high priests wore golden masks to cover their faces in death. They believed the mask helped them stay recognizable in the afterlife. But over time, stories began to spread. Some said those who disturbed these golden masks fell ill, had strange dreams, or met sudden misfortune. It made people wonder, was it the gold itself, or something deeper? Think about moments when something looked perfect on the outside but felt wrong on the inside, like a gift wrapped beautifully, but carrying a message that leaves you unsettled, or a person who smiles at you, but you sense they're hiding something. The golden masks carry that same tension. They shine, they impress, but they also hide a face, one that no longer breathes, no longer sees. The beauty becomes a barrier, and the silence behind it speaks louder than words. Some masks were placed over the faces of powerful leaders. Others were buried with common people who had saved their gold for this one final display. They were more than decoration. They were symbols. Some were crafted with smiling lips, closed eyes, and gentle cheeks, as if the mask tried to soften the truth of death. But others were more stern, even frightening. Some believed these masks didn't just honor the dead, they protected the living. From what, though? We don't know. The idea of a cursed object is something we still feel today. You might have a photo you can't bring yourself to delete, or a necklace that reminds you of someone you've lost. These items carry weight, not because of what they are, but because of what they hold. Emotion, memory, mystery. The ancient gold masks held the same. For some, they were protection. For others, they were warnings. And for those who found them centuries later, they raised more questions than answers. Have you ever felt that a certain item carried a strange energy? Maybe a ring from a family member or an old toy from your childhood that still makes you pause. It's a human instinct to look at objects and wonder if they remember us, to give meaning to things that cannot speak. The gold masks of ancient tombs do just that. They don't move. They don't talk. But they seem to know. These quiet faces connect to something deeper. They touch belief, our hope that something waits for us after this life. They connect to language, the way we speak about death, memory, and mystery. They echo through mental health, the feeling of carrying things we can't explain, things that live only in our thoughts, and they even mirror how we build machines to reflect us now. A gold mask is not so different from a digital face created to remember, to protect, or sometimes to hide. I wonder, have you ever seen something beautiful that made you feel uneasy, or held something that felt heavier than it should be? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let's make a space for quiet stories and curious thoughts. If this journey into the golden silence stirred something in you, consider liking and subscribing. Your small click helps us keep telling soft, thoughtful tales from the edges of history and the heart. Thank you for being here and for listening. Underground Serapium Passage. Imagine walking down a narrow stone tunnel, cool air brushing your skin, your footsteps echoing quietly in the silence. The walls around you are carved smooth and the path stretches forward into shadow. Then, as your eyes adjust, you begin to see massive stone boxes, each larger than a car, resting in silence, untouched for thousands of years. These are not treasure chests, they are coffins, but not for kings or queens, for bulls. Long ago in ancient Egypt, certain bulls were treated as more than animals. They were sacred. Chosen from birth and raised with care, these bulls were believed to carry something divine inside them. When they died, they were given the same honors as rulers. Their bodies were carefully wrapped, and their remains were sealed inside huge stone sarcophagi. And those sarcophagi were hidden in a special place deep underground, known today as the Serapeum. The Serapeum sits beneath the sands of Saqqara, close to the famous pyramids. But unlike the towering monuments above ground, this place hides its secrets far below. And it feels different. It's not open or bright. It's not grand in the way palaces are. It's quiet, heavy, intimate. You don't just visit the Serapeum, you feel it. Have you ever been in a place that felt heavier than it looked? A room that felt like it remembered something you couldn't quite name? Maybe an old attic, or a silent library, or even a childhood bedroom after a hard day. The Serapeum carries that kind of weight. It's made of stone, but it feels like it holds emotions, like whispers still linger in the dark. The people who built this passage were skilled. The tunnels are carved with precision. The sarcophagi are so large and perfectly shaped that even today, people wonder how they moved them into place. There's no light inside, at least not natural light, just cold walls, warm breath, and the soft sound of your own heartbeat. Imagine ancient priests walking here with flickering oil lamps. Imagine them pausing beside the tomb of a bull, murmuring soft prayers, thanking it for its service to the gods. But why bulls? That's a question historians still discuss. Some believe these animals were connected to strength and life. Others say the bull represented rebirth. But what if these tombs were more than graves? What if they were a message, a ritual, a symbol of something we've forgotten? It's like finding a sealed letter in a language you can't read. The meaning is there, but it's quiet, patient, waiting for you to listen. In our world today, we don't often think of animals as sacred, but sometimes we still treat certain objects or spaces with quiet respect. A worn photograph, a locket from someone you miss, even an old jacket that smells like home. These things might seem ordinary, but they carry memory, emotion, connection. Just like the bulls in the Serapeum carried something sacred to the people of their time. Some visitors to the Serapeum describe feeling uneasy, not afraid, but aware. aware that they are in a place designed for something beyond logic, a place where belief mattered more than explanation. Maybe the priests whispered hopes into the stone. Maybe they spoke to something they couldn't see. Or maybe in the quiet, they listened. Have you ever whispered into the dark, not expecting an answer, but hoping someone, somewhere, might hear? Maybe late at night, after a hard day, you've said something out loud to the ceiling, the sky, or yourself. That quiet honesty, that gentle need to be heard is part of what makes us human, and it's what gives places like the Serapeum their power, not because of what they are, but because of what they hold. The underground passage teaches us something simple, that even in the dark, even in silence, meaning can survive. Belief can live on, and memory doesn't need sunlight to stay warm. I'd love to know, have you ever visited a place that felt like it was holding a secret, or touched something that felt older than time? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. It helps us all feel a little more connected. If this journey into ancient tunnels and sacred silence brought a sense of calm or curiosity to your night, consider liking and subscribing. It helps us keep making these thoughtful journeys, one quiet step at a time. Thank you for being here. Ivory writing tablets. Imagine holding a smooth piece of ivory in your hands, not for jewelry or decoration, but as a notebook. Now imagine you're not an adult, but a child, sitting on a stone floor with legs tucked underneath you. You're in an open-air classroom somewhere in ancient Egypt, the sun filtering down through woven shade above. And that ivory piece in your hand? It's where you're learning your first words. Not in any alphabet we know today, but in tiny, carefully carved pictures, symbols that stand for life, love, gods, rivers, kings, and time itself. This is how some children, thousands of years ago, learned to read and write. When we think of school today, we picture pencils and paper, buzzing classrooms, maybe even whiteboards and screens. But in ancient Egypt, education looked different. Some lessons happened in temples, others in open courtyards or quiet homes. There were no backpacks, no lunch bells, but there was knowledge, and there were tools to pass it on. And one of those tools was the ivory writing tablet. These tablets were small enough to hold, but large enough to be used again and again. Smooth ivory made a perfect surface to write on with ink or scratch into with a stylus. They were precious, not just because ivory was rare, but because knowledge itself was rare. Only a small group of people could read and write. They were known as scribes, and their job was important. They recorded everything, from the names of kings to the amount of grain in storage. And to become a scribe, you had to start young. Imagine being that child, waking up early, listening to the voice of your teacher as he repeats symbols and sounds, holding your tablet steady while you copy each sign. Your hands are a little shaky. At first, maybe you smudge the ink, maybe you draw a bird instead of a basket. Your teacher corrects you with patience, but you feel the pressure, because being a scribe means security, it means respect. It means a life not spent building pyramids or farming in the hot sun. Do you remember learning to write your own name for the first time? Maybe you wrote it too big. Maybe you reversed a letter. But there was a kind of pride in seeing it on paper. That's what these children likely felt too. Writing wasn't just skill, it was identity. To write in hieroglyphs was to touch something sacred. Every word had weight. Every sign carried sound and spirit. The ivory tablets were used and reused. Mistakes could be wiped clean. Lessons could be practiced over and over again. And over time, those simple signs became sentences, stories, prayers, rules, decrees. These weren't just school exercises. They were the building blocks of history. But think about the material for a moment. Ivory. It came from elephants. And elephants did not roam the streets of Egyptian cities. Ivory had to be brought in from far away. That means these tools were valuable, even rare. Only a few children, likely from wealthy or respected families, had access to them. Education was not for everyone. It was a privilege, and the weight of that privilege sat in the palm of a small hand. What's interesting is how even now, across time, we still understand the feeling of holding something that matters, The first time you were given a new notebook. The first time someone trusted you with information. The first time you realized that learning was a kind of magic. That's what writing is. Still, magic. It turns thoughts into symbols, feelings into something others can see. And back then, for a child in ancient Egypt, learning to write was not just about language. It was about becoming part of something bigger, a system, a tradition, a belief. Some of these tablets have survived. They've been found in tombs or buried in sand, preserved by time. Their surfaces still show faded marks, practiced strokes, crooked lines, careful corrections. They are silent now, but they whisper of childhood, of effort, of a deep human need to express. Can you imagine being that child? Not knowing if the signs you are learning will ever be read by another person, just copying, repeating, hoping to improve. The same way someone today might practice their name in cursive, or struggle through a new language, or write a letter they never send. These old tablets remind us that learning has always been hard, and always worth it. Whether you're sitting in a classroom or lying awake wondering what your future holds, the process is the same, step by step, mark by mark, thought by thought. Have you ever kept something from your childhood? A notebook, a drawing, a spelling test with a star? Maybe you found it years later and smiled at how small your writing was. That quiet memory, that simple object, holds a world, just like the ivory tablets held dreams of children who grew up to shape their civilization. If this quiet journey into ancient learning brought a little calm to your evening, or made you think of your own school days, feel free to share in the comments. Where did you first learn to write? What do you remember about those early days? Thank you for spending this gentle moment with me. If you'd like more thoughtful stories to fall asleep to, consider liking and subscribing. We'll keep exploring, one soft step at a time. Obelisk Star Alignments. Have you ever stood outside at night and looked up at the stars, wondering if they were trying to tell you something? Maybe you've watched the moon move slowly across the sky, or noticed how the same stars return to the same place each season. Now, imagine living thousands of years ago. No phone, no clock, no internet. Just you, the earth, and the sky. How would you tell time? How would you understand your place in the world? The ancient Egyptians may have had their answer. Tall pointed stones rising from the ground, silent, still, and always reaching for the stars. These were the obelisks, huge columns carved from single pieces of stone standing straight and narrow, like frozen lightning bolts. They weren't just decorations. They weren't only monuments. Some believe they were more than that. Tools for watching the sky, perhaps even messages to it. But why and how? If you've ever tried to follow the sun with your eyes, you know how hard it is. It rises, it moves, and then it disappears, only to come back again. But it's not just the sun, the stars shift too. Patterns like Orion or the Big Dipper don't stay still. They turn slowly, night after night. Ancient people noticed this. They watched closely. And over time, they started to build things to match what they saw. The Egyptians were masters of this. Their temples, pyramids, and even streets often lined up with the sky in strange and specific ways. And obelisks, those tall stone needles, were no exception. They were placed with purpose, not randomly, not just for beauty. Their shadows moved as the sun did. Their points seemed to aim at certain stars. It's almost like they were giant stone clocks, or silent guides pointing to something beyond Earth. Have you ever sat still and watched a shadow stretch across the ground as the day goes by? Maybe under a tree, or on a school wall. That's what these obelisks did, only on a grand scale. Their sharp tops caught the light. Their long shadows moved like silent hands on a sundial. And when placed in pairs at temple entrances, they may have marked more than just time. Some think they marked days when stars rose or set in perfect alignment. Days that mattered deeply. To the people who built them, it's hard to imagine the effort it took, carving a 70-foot-tall obelisk from a single piece of granite, transporting it without modern machines, lifting it, balancing it, making it stand upright. All for a shadow, for a line of starlight? Maybe it seems strange, but to the Egyptians the sky was more than just weather. It was filled with meaning, signs, patterns, messages, some for the gods, some for the living, some for the dead. Think of how we use time today. Alarms, calendars, appointments. We live by it, even if we don't always notice. But imagine not having a clock. You'd rely on nature, the rising sun, the length of a shadow, the moment when a star appears above the horizon. Maybe you'd even start to believe that those moments were chosen for you, that the stars were keeping track of you, not the other way around. That's what makes the obelisks so haunting. They don't just stand still, they watch, they wait. And maybe they speak in a language too slow for us to hear. Even today, people feel drawn to them. You can see one in Paris, another in Rome, another in New York, all taken from their original homes, still standing tall in new lands, and yet they seem to carry their mystery with them, like they remember where they once pointed, like they are still in conversation with the sky above, even when surrounded by modern noise. Have you ever felt like you were meant to be somewhere at a certain time, but you couldn't explain why? Like a moment lined up just right? A chance meeting, a sudden idea, a quiet feeling that something big had just passed by, unnoticed. That's the kind of feeling these obelisks seem to hold. They stand in stillness, but they speak of motion. They are heavy with stone, but they point to light. Some researchers think the alignments had practical use. Maybe the Egyptians used them to plan farming seasons, or religious festivals, or the times to build or to rest. But others wonder if it was more emotional than practical. Maybe aligning things with the stars made them feel connected, less alone, like there was an order to everything even when life felt confusing or painful. We still do that, don't we? We look for meaning in patterns, on birthdays, in lucky numbers, in how the stars looked the night we were born. It helps us feel like we're part of something bigger. That's the gentle power of the obelisks, not just their size, but their purpose. They remind us that even long ago, people were asking the same questions we do now. Who am I? Where do I belong? Is someone or something watching over me? If you've ever felt that quiet awe when you stare up at the stars, or wondered why some places just feel more peaceful, maybe you've already shared a moment with these ancient time watchers. Maybe the idea of alignment, of being in the right place at the right time, speaks to something deep in all of us. Have you ever visited a place where everything just felt right? Like the light hit the walls perfectly? Like the silence had meaning? Feel free to share that place in the comments. Maybe someone else felt the same way there too. Thank you for joining me in this gentle story about stone and sky. If you'd like more calming tales and quiet mysteries to help you rest, you're always welcome here. Take a deep breath. You're right on time. Mummy linen codes. Have you ever held on to something small, maybe a letter, a photo, or a note tucked into your pocket, just because it made you feel safe? Not because it could fix anything, but because it meant something. Now imagine being wrapped in that feeling. Every layer carries a quiet hope, a wish, a prayer. That's what ancient Egyptians may have done, not just with thoughts but with fabric, not just with love but with language. Wrapping the dead in linen, but not just plain cloth, clothes marked with signs, symbols, words, as if every fold was a whisper meant to last forever. When we think of mummies, we often imagine silence, stillness, a body carefully preserved, lying in the dark. But what if that silence held layers of meaning? What if every band of linen was part of a message, a code, a protection? Some scholars believe that the linen used to wrap mummies wasn't just random fabric, it was chosen with care. Sometimes even marked with symbols, not always large, not always clear, but present, like tiny anchors for the soul. Imagine writing something for someone who's leaving on a long journey, knowing you may never see them again. That's the kind of care these wrappings might have carried, not just for the body, but for the spirit, If you've ever packed a suitcase before a trip, you know how each item you place inside feels a little bit like love. A sweater because it might get cold. A snack, just in case. A note, maybe hidden in a pocket. Something to remind someone that they're not alone. That's how the linen codes feel. Care, folded gently between layers of time. We often think of writing as something we read, but the Egyptians treated words differently. They believed words had power, that speaking a name kept a person alive, that writing a symbol didn't just show meaning. It could do something. It could be protected, it could be a blessing, it could be a guide. So imagine what it meant to wrap someone you loved in fabric, touched by those kinds of words. Some of these markings may have been prayers. Some were names of gods. Others could have been instructions or poems, all carried in silence, not spoken out loud, but places where only the soul might see them. It makes you wonder how much can be said without sound, without even knowing the full language. Have you ever felt someone's love in just a small gesture? A hand on your shoulder? A note that just said, "Thinking of you"? That's what these folded linens feel like. The process of mummification was long. It took weeks, and the wrapping was one of the last steps. Slow, gentle, thoughtful, like tucking someone in, knowing they won't wake up, but hoping, in some way, they will arrive. Somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere kind. And each wrap, each fold, may have been paired with a line of a prayer, a soft chant, a breath held between words. If you've ever repeated something to yourself in a moment of fear, like, "It's going to be okay," or "Just breathe," then you understand. Sometimes repetition brings calm, brings comfort, brings protection. Imagine repeating a blessing as you wrap each layer. That's what the priests may have done. That's what the family may have believed. It's strange to think of fabric holding memory, but it does. A baby blanket, a wedding dress, a scarf that belonged to someone who is gone. We hold on to those because they remind us of something real, something deep. The Egyptians understood that too. They didn't separate memory from material. They believed both body and spirit needed care. And maybe, in some way, even the linen carried memory. There are modern stories of archaeologists finding these symbols, sometimes just lines, sometimes full names, written in ink, worn with time, but still there, still waiting. Some believe that certain folds may have had patterns, like wrapping in a specific direction, or starting with certain limbs, like a ritual dance done with cloth. Each step means something, even if we no longer understand exactly what. Have you ever folded a piece of paper so many times it starts to feel soft? Like it's become something more than just paper? That's what these linen wraps may have become. Soft layers of intention. The cloth wasn't just wrapping. It was part of the journey. A silent language that the soul might read as it passed between worlds. Even today we hold on to rituals. We light candles. We say goodbye in certain ways. We send messages to people who are no longer here, in journals, in whispers, in thoughts we can't explain. Maybe that's not so different. Maybe we still believe that words can travel farther than we can see. That language, even a silent language, has power. And maybe that's the quiet mystery of mummy linen codes. They remind us that the people before us were not so different. They grieved, they hoped, they tried to protect the ones they loved. Not with weapons, not with walls, but with cloth and symbols, and the soft belief that words can hold someone, even when you no longer can. Have you ever kept something that reminded you of someone you miss? A scarf, a shirt, maybe just a scrap of paper? What did it make you feel when you held it again? You can share that in the comments if you'd like. Maybe someone else will feel a little less alone when they read it. Thank you for joining me in this gentle story, stitched through with quiet meaning. If you'd like more calm stories and peaceful, thoughts to help you rest or reflect, you're always welcome here. Rest easy. The symbols are still speaking. Canopic jar riddles. Have you ever kept something safe? Not because it was useful now, but because it meant something too important to let go? Maybe it was a letter, a photo, or even something small, like a button or a lock of hair. Something that felt like it held a piece of someone's spirit. Now imagine needing to do that for someone who's no longer alive, not just for memory, but because you believed that part of them still had somewhere to go, somewhere far beyond what you could see. That's what the ancient Egyptians believed. And so, they placed 4 special jars near the dead, each one guarding something precious, each one holding a part of the mystery of what comes after life. They were called canopic jars, and they didn't hold ashes or dust. They held organs, real human organs, the stomach, the liver, the lungs, and the intestines. The heart and brain were handled separately, but these 4, they were protected, carefully removed, gently wrapped, and placed in jars shaped like gods. It wasn't just science. It was a belief. It was a ritual. It was love and fear woven into clay. Each jar had a different lid, not random but shaped like a head, one like a jackal, one like a falcon, one like a baboon, and one like a human. These weren't decorations. These were guardians, each one linked to a protective spirit, known as the Sons of Horus. They weren't there just to store. They were there to watch over, to shield, to guide. Have you ever trusted someone to look after something important for you? Maybe you left your pet with a friend while you were away, or you asked someone to take care of your plants. There's a special kind of trust in that. You're handing over something living, something fragile, something that matters. That's how the Egyptians saw these jars. Not just containers, but caretakers. And the question is, why? Why go through such an effort? Why save the lungs, the stomach, the liver, and intestines? Why not the brain or the heart? Why not bury everything together? That's where the riddle begins. The mystery that has puzzled people for centuries. And maybe the answer lies not just in medicine, but in meaning. The Egyptians believed the body and soul were deeply connected, that the soul needed the body whole in the next world, but they also knew the body decayed, so they tried to protect it, not just from time, but from chaos, from the unknown. Each organ was given to a god not because of function, but because of feeling, because of what it represented. The liver, placed in the jar of Imseti, who had a human face, was linked to blood and life. The lungs, guarded by Hapi, with the head of a baboon, were tied to breath and voice. The stomach, kept by Duamutef, the jackal, was about digestion, breaking down the world. And the intestines, held by Kebesenuef, the falcon, may have stood for purification, for making the body ready. It's a strange thing to think about, your stomach being more than just a body part. But if you've ever felt sick from stress or butterflies before something big, you know your stomach holds more than food. It holds a feeling, emotion, fear. Maybe the Egyptians understood that too, that the body's parts were not just tools, but stories. They cleaned the organs, wrapped them, placed them in jars with careful prayers. Some jars had texts written on them, spells or invocations, not to trap the soul, but to guard it, to help it pass through trials in the next world, like giving someone a map before a long, dark journey. The jars weren't sealed away as forgotten things. They were part of the plan, the path, the preparation. Have you ever prepared for a big exam or interview? You packed your bag, charged your phone, review your notes, and maybe you carried something small with you. Something comforting, a lucky charm, a coin, a keychain. Not because it had power, but because it gave you confidence. That's what the canopic jars might have been. Confidence for the soul, comfort in the dark. And yet they remain mysterious. We've found many of them. Some are empty. Some are still holding what they once did. And even now, after all this time, we don't fully understand every reason they were made. Not just practically, but symbolically. What did each one mean to the family who placed it in the tomb? What did it feel like to hand over a part of someone you loved, trusting it to stone? The jars remind us that people in the past were not cold or distant. They were deeply emotional. They felt lost. They feared what came next. They wanted to protect those they loved in every way they could. And in a world without machines, without hospitals or labs, they turned to what they knew best: ritual, symbol, spirit. Some believed that the jars' gods were more than just figures. They were guides for the soul, helping it navigate the challenges of the afterlife, like checkpoints along a path. Others think the jars were more about preserving identity, that to exist beyond death, you had to bring your full self, even the parts people never see. It's also possible that not everyone used the jars in the same way. Over time, customs changed. In later years, the jars became symbolic, sometimes even left empty. Maybe that tells us something too, that even when the practice shifted, the meaning remained, that the idea of protecting a person, mind, body, and soul, was what truly mattered. If you've ever made a time capsule, or buried something meaningful, you understand. You're not just saving an object. You're saving a story, a feeling, a belief that maybe, somehow someone will find it and understand that you were here, that you cared. And that's the heart of the canopic jar riddle. It's not just a puzzle about organs. It's a question of care, of belief, of what it means to prepare someone for a journey you can't go on with them, to send them off with guardians, and to believe deep down that those small jars, those silent watchers, might just help them find their way. If you've ever created something to remember someone by a song, a photo album, even a quiet corner in your room, feel free to share that below. These stories connect us across time and space, across beliefs and bodies, and maybe, just maybe, that's what the jars were really about. Thank you for spending this moment with me. If you'd like to hear more stories that soothe, stir wonder, and help you rest, you are always welcome here. Sleep well, and let the guardians keep watch. Heartbeat hieroglyphs. Have you ever tried to put a feeling into words, only to realize that no word feels quite right? Maybe it was love, or grief, or joy so quiet it almost didn't make a sound. Sometimes, language feels too small for what the heart holds. But what if you had symbols that could reach deeper? What if you could write not just with letters, but with life itself? With images that carried emotion, movement, rhythm? The ancient Egyptians believed they could. And so they wrote with hieroglyphs, not just to record facts, but to echo the heartbeat of a soul. These signs weren't just for stories or names. Some were for the invisible things, the things you feel but can't see, like breath, like a heartbeat, like the spirit that rises and falls, quietly, inside the chest. The Egyptians had a sign for life. They had one for breath, one for heart, and often they used them together, because to them, life wasn't made up of minutes or hours. It was made of pulses, of rhythms, of signs that carried the soul. The word for heart in their language was ib. But this wasn't just a body part. It was a center of emotion, thought, and will. They believed the heart remembered. It was decided. It spoke the truth. It was more than a muscle. It was a mirror. When someone died, their heart would be weighed against a feather. Not their mind, not their actions, their heart, because that's where everything really lived. Think about the last time your heart raced, maybe during an exam, a big decision, or a conversation that mattered. You didn't choose for it to beat faster, it just did, like it knew before you did. The Egyptians noticed that too, that your heart tells stories long before your words catch up. So when they wrote about a person, they often included the symbol for heart. It wasn't just about health, it was about truth. Their hieroglyphs didn't work like our alphabet. Each one was a little picture, a bird, a ripple, a flame, a piece of rope. And each symbol carried not just sound but sense, feeling. They believed that writing could hold energy, that symbols could live on stone or papyrus like heartbeat lives in a body, silent but strong. There's a symbol for life that looks like a loop with arms. It's called the Ankh. You may have seen it in photos or jewelry. It stood for breath, heartbeat, soul. Some say it's shaped like a key. Others say it looks like a person, arms wide open. Either way, it was used everywhere. People wore it, painted it, offered it in tombs, because to hold that symbol was to hold the rhythm of life itself. And here's something curious. When Egyptians carved scenes of gods giving life to humans, they didn't just show light or air. They showed the Ankh being held to the nose or lips, as if saying, "Here, breathe, live, feel." The hieroglyph wasn't just decoration. It was a blessing, a gift, a heartbeat drawn in stone. Have you ever drawn something that meant more than it looked? Maybe a little heart on a note, a sun in the corner of a page, a swirl when you're thinking. We all have these marks. Quiet symbols that say more than words. The Egyptians made that their whole language. And in it, the heartbeat showed up again and again. There were hieroglyphs for the pulse, for joy, for sadness, even for anxiety. One sign looked like an arm across a chest, maybe like someone holding themselves, protecting the heart. Another showed water lines, like the rising and falling of emotion. They didn't separate feelings from language. They wrote with both. It makes you wonder, did they feel the weight of silence like we do? When someone is gone, and there's nothing left but the echo of their voice, would they run their fingers over the carved signs and feel somehow that the heart still beat through the stone? Maybe that's why they wrote so much in tombs. Not to be read, but to be felt, like a whisper from the past that says, "I'm still here." Even their word for writing, medunetcher, meant words of the gods, not casual notes, not just facts, but something sacred, alive. Like each sign had power, maybe not to change fate, but to carry memories, to keep the heartbeat of a person, a prayer, a moment, moving forward. If you've ever kept a journal or saved a message from someone you love, you understand this. We write not just to remember, but to keep something alive, to freeze a second, to hold on even when everything else is slipping away. That's what heartbeat hieroglyphs were, a way to hold what mattered. And there's something else. The Egyptians believed the heart could speak, that in the afterlife it would stand before judgment and tell the truth of your life. They had spells to make sure the heart wouldn't betray the person, words carved on amulets placed near the chest, not to silence the heart, but to guide it, to ask it, "Be kind, be fair, remember who I was." We might not believe the same things today, but we still hope our hearts are understood, that when we speak from them, we'll be heard, that someone will see the good in us even when our words fall short. Maybe that's the thread that connects us to the past. Not what we know, but what we feel. In a world of noise and screens, it can be easy to forget the quiet rhythm inside us. That steady beat, that pulse. It's there when we laugh, when we cry, when we fall asleep thinking of someone far away. The Egyptians didn't forget. They carved it into their walls, wrote it into their language, and through those signs they gave their heartbeat to time. If you've ever felt something so deeply it couldn't be said, only drawn, written, or held in silence, share it if you like, or just sit with it. Let it live. Because maybe the most important parts of us aren't loud. They're soft, like breath, like a pulse, like the rhythm of a symbol carved in stone still beating across centuries. Thank you for letting this moment be still with you. If you'd like more stories that calm, connect, and carry you gently toward rest, you're always welcome here. Let the rhythm be soft tonight. Sleep well. Salt pyramid. Erosion. Have you ever looked at an old family photo and noticed how different someone looked? Maybe a wrinkle here, a sunspot there, and thought, how much time has passed? But what if you couldn't trust the photo's date? What if the weather, not memory, was telling the real story? This strange thought brings us to something even older than family albums. Ancient pyramids whose outer faces have been slowly shaped by the wind, not by tools or time, but by something gentler and more mysterious, could the weather itself be, whispering secrets about their age? Now imagine this. You're walking through the desert and the wind is dry, soft, but relentless. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shout. But over years, even centuries, it begins to carve, not like a hammer or a chisel, but like a breath that never stops. Slowly, layer by layer, it touches the stones, and after enough time, it changes the shape of what was once sharp, once new. The face of a statue loses its smile. The edge of a pyramid becomes smooth, and without meaning to, nature begins to rewrite history. The Salt Pyramid in Egypt, though not as famous as the Great Pyramid of Giza, carries its own quiet mystery. Its outer stones, especially on the lower sides, show signs of erosion that don't quite match the usual story we're told about their construction. Some scientists look at the patterns, the smoothness, the direction of wear, and wonder, could these marks be caused not just by time but by weather from a much earlier period? Perhaps even by water, not wind. It's a strange thing to think about, that the wind or maybe ancient rains might be telling a story we've missed. A story that says, this was here long before you thought. Not in words, not in dates, but in scars. In smooth curves where there should be angles. In washed-out surfaces where carvings should be crisp. Have you ever tried to remember something clearly, only to realize the memory has softened with time? You remember how you felt, but not the details. You remember the warmth of a day, but not the date. This is how weather works too. It doesn't remove the pyramid, but it softens the details. And sometimes, in that softening, a new truth is revealed. Many scholars still believe the pyramids are about 4,500 years old. That's the official story. And perhaps it's true. But others quietly ask, what if they're older? What if the signs of erosion don't match the dry desert climate we know today? What if these patterns were formed in a time when Egypt looked very different? When rains came more often, when the air carried more moisture, when the land was still finding its shape? It's like looking at a friend's face and realizing the lines you see aren't just from this year, but from decades of laughter, of tears, of sunlit afternoons. You start to wonder about the moments that shaped them, even the ones they don't remember. The pyramids are the same. Their outer skin carries a memory they may not be able to speak, but the wind remembers. Now think of how we often measure age. For people, it's candles on a cake. For trees, it's the rings inside their trunks. For buildings, it's usually documents or tools found nearby. But what if nature had its own way of counting? Not in numbers, but in marks. In where? In the slow movement of sand against stone? Some of the erosion on the Salt Pyramid looks like something caused by water flowing down, not just wind blowing across. That leads some to wonder if it once faced a different climate, a wetter one, perhaps thousands of years earlier than we thought. If that's true, it changes not just the pyramid story, but our entire idea of when and how early humans began building in stone. Were we carving temples before we were farming fields? Were we watching stars from rooftops long before? We were writing laws. These questions stretch the imagination, but they also bring something warm and human to the surface, because they remind us that even the strongest things, stone, tradition, history, can be shaped by the softest forces, just like our thoughts are shaped by quiet conversations, just like our hearts are shaped by time, not events. Have you ever stood outside during a light rain and felt how slowly it seeps into your clothes? Not harsh, just steady. And after enough time, it changes how you feel. This is what the desert wind does to stone. It's not loud, it doesn't seem powerful, but it is patient. And over centuries, patience becomes power. There's a kind of beauty in that, isn't there? In knowing that nature doesn't rush, that it takes its time to shape mountains, to move rivers, to wear down pyramids. And maybe that's something we can carry into our own lives, that even when progress feels slow, or when change feels invisible, something is always moving, always shifting. The Salt Pyramid might be older than we thought, or maybe it's exactly as old as the records say. Either way, its story is not told by stone alone. It's told by what's missing, what's smooth instead of sharp, what's weathered instead of fresh. And that story written in air and dust might be more honest than any number in a book. It makes you wonder, how much of what we think we know is just the loudest version of the story, not the truest? How many truths are hidden in silence? In softness? In the spaces we don't usually look? If you've ever lived in a place where the weather changes things, where wind carves hills, or snow softens edges, or rain stains walls, you know that nature always leaves a mark. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't leave a note, but it changes everything. And maybe that's what the Salt Pyramid is showing us. That history isn't just in the hands of people, it's in the hands of time, of wind, of water, of silence. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that take the longest to write. Have you ever visited a place and felt like it was older than anyone could explain? Maybe a quiet mountain, or an old tree, or a stone path worn smooth by feet that no one remembers? Share that place if you'd like, or just hold it in your heart. Because places remember, stones remember, and sometimes they wait for someone gentle enough to ask. So tonight, as you rest, imagine that gentle wind brushing the face of a pyramid. Not rushing, just breathing, just touching. Like time itself whispering a story through every grain of sand. Sleep well, and let that softness carry you into stillness. Boat-shaped coffins. Have you ever closed your eyes at night and imagined floating, not on water, but through stars? The gentle rocking, the quiet, the feeling of drifting through a sky with no end. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? Maybe, after all the noise of life, there is silence, and in that silence, a journey. A final one. Now imagine if that peaceful image wasn't just a dream, but something people long ago believed could really happen. That the soul could sail, not just into the earth, but into the heavens. In ancient Egypt, some coffins weren't just boxes to bury the dead. They were shaped like boats. Long, curved, elegant, made to look like something that belonged on water, even though they would never float. These burial barges were laid on land, placed carefully in tombs, as if the journey ahead needed more than just rest. It needed direction. It needed motion. Why a boat, you might wonder? Why would anyone shape a coffin like something meant to sail? We've all seen boats, on lakes, in harbors, in old paintings. Some of us have ridden in them. Maybe you've taken a ferry, or a canoe, or just watched them from a bridge. And there's always something soothing about the way a boat moves. Slow, rocking gently, the sound of water against the side. It feels like leaving without rushing, like heading somewhere unknown but without fear. That's what the ancient Egyptians may have believed, too. That death wasn't the end, but a voyage, a quiet sailing across invisible waters. And to make that idea real, they didn't just speak of it. They built it. They carved it into wood. They shaped it into stone. They imagined the soul stepping into this boat-shaped coffin and setting off, not into darkness, but into the sky. They believed the night sky itself was a kind of river, and that the stars were not just lights, but destinations. Some thought the soul would travel with the sun god, Ra, who sailed a golden boat across the heavens by day, and then through the underworld by night. It was a cycle, like sleep and waking, like breathing in and out. Have you ever watched the stars and felt like they were moving just a little, or felt like the sky was somehow deeper than it looked? That's what the ancient Egyptians saw. And in that depth, they placed their hopes, their loved ones, their stories. Boat-shaped coffins weren't common for everyone. They were often used for those thought to be special, people of high status or deep spiritual meaning. But the idea behind them touched everyone, that we are not buried. We are carried forward, carried onward, through the stars, through the unknown. Think about how we say goodbye to someone we've lost. We use words like passed on, gone ahead, or resting. We talk about them being in a better place, or watching over us. These words help us soften the sharp edge of loss, and maybe they come from a very old place in our minds, a place that once imagined a boat. Quiet, waiting, ready to sail. What's touching about these coffins is the detail, the care. They weren't just shaped like boats. Some even had carved oars, sails, or markings of the Nile, as if the builders truly believed this wasn't just symbolic. This was the real beginning of the soul's next voyage. And like any good traveler, the soul needed a good vessel. It's like when we pack for a long trip. We choose carefully. We prepare. We don't know exactly what we'll face, but we want to be ready. That same care shows in these burial barges, as if the body was resting, but the soul was sailing. Slowly, gently, into a sky that was more water than air. Have you ever had a dream where you were floating? Not falling, but just drifting. Those dreams stay with us, don't they? They leave a strange peace behind. And perhaps that's what these coffins were meant to offer too, not just for the person inside, but for the family left behind. To look at that boat and believe, truly believe, that their loved one had not stopped. They had simply gone ahead. There's something universal about this. Even in other cultures, the image of the soul crossing water appears again and again. The river Styx in Greek mythology, the Viking ship set on fire at sea. The idea that water is the last path we take, that in the end, we float away, not in fear but in freedom. Maybe that's because water moves like time. It doesn't ask permission. It flows. It carries. And once you're in it, you can't go back. But maybe you don't need to, because where you're going is somewhere the living can't yet follow, but somewhere that feels peaceful. So what do we take from all this now in our modern lives? Maybe we don't build boat-shaped coffins, but we still search for comfort in the idea of a journey. We still look up at the stars and wonder where we'll go when we leave here. We still write stories, sing songs, and light candles to help our minds imagine that those we've lost are not truly gone. And maybe that's enough. Maybe belief doesn't have to be proven. Maybe it just has to be felt. If you've ever lost someone close to you, you know how heavy silence can feel. But sometimes it helps to picture them not gone, but sailing, quietly, softly, through a sky filled with stars. Maybe they're watching the same moon. Maybe they're waving from far away, where the air is gentle and the water never ends. Wherever you are right now, whether it's near a sea, a river, or a place where stars are hard to see, imagine just for a moment a small boat, smooth, safe, floating not on water but on sky, and inside someone you love, not asleep, just traveling. Feel that peace, let it hold you, and if you'd like, share a place or a person you carry in your heart, something you wish could sail forever. Because these stories connect us, just like rivers, just like stars, just like dreams that feel too real to forget. Tonight, may your breath be calm, may your thoughts be light, and may you drift gently like a boat on a quiet sky. Red painted chambers. Imagine walking into a room, and immediately your eyes are drawn to the walls, bright red, as if soaked in blood, a striking color, one that holds so much emotion and intensity. It's not just any red, it's a deep, almost eerie crimson that seems to pulse with life. You might feel a sense of unease, wondering why anyone would choose such a color to surround themselves. What if this room had been painted centuries ago, perhaps in an ancient civilization, and the red wasn't just a decorative choice? Perhaps it was painted for protection, to ward off something unknown. Or maybe it was painted to signify danger, as if to warn others of something hidden deep within these walls. A question lingers in the air. Why this blood hue? And what was it meant to convey? The idea of red-painted chambers isn't just a curiosity, it's an enigma that stretches across time. It draws us in, making us wonder about the people who once lived in these spaces, their beliefs, fears, and practices. What if this red wasn't simply for decoration? What if it was meant to protect or even harm? Red has always carried deep meanings: passion, violence, life, and death. But in ancient contexts, especially in places like tombs, rituals, and sacred spaces, its significance might have been even more complex. Perhaps it was a symbol of life, or maybe it was a way of keeping danger at bay. There are so many layers to uncover when you look at these ancient red-painted chambers. If you've ever stepped into a room with bright, bold colors, you might have noticed how it changes the atmosphere. Red, for example, is known to make our hearts race and our minds stir. In modern life, we often associate red with warning signs, urgency, or even anger. But in ancient times, the color might have had different associations. Some cultures believed that red could protect them from evil spirits or malevolent forces. They might have painted their homes or sacred spaces in red to create a barrier between themselves and these unseen threats. The very act of painting these chambers in such a striking color could have been a form of ritual, a way to connect with the unseen world around them. But what if the red was not just a defense? What if it was a symbol of power, or perhaps a tool for a much darker purpose? Think of the color of blood, often seen as a life-giving force but also linked to violence, war, and sacrifice. The red in these chambers might not have been a shield, but a signal of something more sinister, a message for those who entered, a warning that something dangerous lay ahead. Or perhaps it was part of a ritualistic practice, where the red walls were meant to invoke fear or to create a certain atmosphere for ceremonies. The line between protection and peril might not always have been clear. It's easy to imagine how the people living in these times might have seen their world differently than we do today. They didn't have the knowledge and understanding of the world that we take for granted. Their lives were often shaped by forces beyond their control, like the seasons, the stars, or even the spirits they believed in. In this context, a painted chamber could have been far more than just a living space. It could have been a place of power, where the forces of the world were channeled through color, symbols, and rituals. To them, the red walls may have been a visual representation of something much larger than their daily lives, a connection to the divine, or a way to call upon protection from the dangers that lurked beyond their homes. Have you ever wondered how something as simple as a color could hold so much weight? Think about it. Every day, we are surrounded by colors that influence how we feel and how we interact with the world. In our own lives, we may decorate our rooms with colors that make us feel calm or energized, depending on the mood we want to create. But for ancient civilizations, colors like red were deeply tied to their beliefs and fears. The act of painting a room red could have been a way to invite strength or shield against harm. It was a visible declaration of intent, something to be seen by both those who lived there and those who passed by. This brings us to a deeper question. What do these red-painted chambers tell us about the people who created them? Were they fearful, seeking to protect themselves from unknown forces? Or were they powerful, using the color as a form of expression, a way to show their strength and control over their environment? Perhaps they were both. The color red itself can be a paradox. It's both inviting and alarming, both protective and aggressive. It can create a sense of warmth and safety, or make you feel on edge. In a way, the red walls of these ancient chambers speak to the complexity of human emotions and instincts. The more we think about it, the more we realize how these chambers might have been designed to provoke a reaction. Maybe the red was there to prepare the mind for something significant, something life-changing. In ancient rituals, color often played a role in guiding the emotional and mental state of participants. Red could have been used to excite or focus the mind, to make those who entered the chamber feel as though they were part of something much larger than themselves. The walls weren't just walls. They were part of a psychological experience. This may seem strange, but if you think about it, it's not so different from how we decorate our own spaces today. In a modern context, when we paint our walls or our rooms, we are still doing the same thing. We are trying to shape our surroundings to fit a particular mood or message. Whether we choose a calming blue for a bedroom or a bold red for a dining room, we are using color to influence how we feel. Now imagine this on a larger scale, on a level where every choice, every detail, is tied to a belief system, a way of life, and a connection to the divine. It's not hard to see how red-painted chambers could have been much more than just spaces for living. They were tools for shaping reality. As we reflect on this, we also begin to consider how beliefs and symbols shape the way we live today. The concept of protection through color still exists in many cultures, where specific colors are believed to ward off bad luck or negative energy. Red, in particular, is still seen in many traditions as a color that brings good fortune or drives away evil. In a way, these ancient chambers are like a window into the past, offering us a glimpse into how people once thought about their world and how they used their environment to influence their lives. It's a reminder that what might seem like a simple choice, like the color of a room, can carry a deep personal meaning. It can be a way to express something that goes beyond the material, something spiritual, something that speaks to our human need for protection, strength, and connection to the world around us. When you think about it, this mystery of the red-painted chambers is not so different from the mysteries we encounter in our own lives. We are constantly searching for ways to protect ourselves, to create spaces that reflect our desires and our fears. These ancient chambers remind us that, at the end of the day, we are all trying to shape our environments in ways that make us feel safe, understood, and connected to something greater. Whether through the walls we paint or the rituals we observe, we are all engaged in the same human search for meaning and security. And sometimes the answers lie in the simplest things, like a splash of red on a wall, waiting to tell its story. Tablet healing prayers. Imagine being sick in a time long before modern medicine. There were no hospitals, no doctors with stethoscopes, and no prescriptions to pick up from a pharmacy. Yet somehow, people still found ways to heal, to feel better, to recover from their ailments. What if I told you that in ancient times, words were often considered just as powerful as medicine? Instead of a pill, they might have handed you a tablet, etched with prayers, incantations, or spells meant to cure your sickness. It's a curious thought, isn't it? The idea that a few carefully chosen words could heal the body or mind. How did words become medicine in those days, and could they have been as effective as we imagine? In the ancient world, healing was not just about physical treatment. It was deeply connected to belief, spirituality, and sometimes even magic. Imagine you're in a small, dimly lit room. The air is heavy with the scent of herbs and incense, and you're lying on a simple bed, sick, with fever. In those days, instead of a doctor giving you a diagnosis, a healer or priest might have spoken words over you, words that were believed to have magical power. These words were often written on clay tablets, stones, or papyrus, and they contained prayers of invocations that were meant to summon divine forces to heal. You might think it sounds strange, but in those times, these words were seen as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Have you ever noticed how, when you're feeling unwell, a few kind words from a loved one can make a big difference? A simple "get well soon" or "you're going to be okay" can have a soothing effect on our mood, even if they don't directly treat the illness. Now, imagine these words were not just comforting, but were believed to hold the power to change your physical state. The ancient practice of healing prayers and spells was built on this very idea, that words, when spoken with intention and belief, could influence not just the mind, but the body as well. The concept of using words for healing may seem distant, but it's not entirely out of reach. Think about how we use words today to comfort each other, to lift our spirits, or to calm our nerves. When you're stressed before an exam, a simple phrase, like "take a deep breath" or "you've got this," can change your mindset, helping you to approach the situation with a clearer mind. In ancient times, this idea was taken even further. Words weren't just supportive, they were considered powerful tools to manipulate the world around you. A healer's prayer wasn't just a request, it was a command to the universe, a way of invoking forces that were thought to have the power to restore health. Whether it was the god of healing or the spirits of the ancestors, the belief was that words could reach beyond the physical realm, guiding those forces to do their work. One might wonder, how did people come to believe that words could have such power? The answer lies in the deep connection between language, belief, and the human experience. For the ancients, language wasn't just a means of communication, It was a force in itself. They believed that speaking a word could shape reality, that an uttered prayer could bring about change. In fact, ancient healing tablets were often inscribed with the names of gods or spirits, calling on their power to heal the sick. These words were more than just symbols. They were a conduit, a way to reach into the spiritual realm and pull down the forces of nature or divinity. Just as we might pray for good health today, those in ancient times used words not just to express a desire, but to actively bring it into being. This connection between words and healing is a reminder of the power of belief. In our own lives, how often have we found that our mindset can influence our well-being? Think about the days when you feel truly positive and confident. Don't you notice that you're more likely to feel good physically too? On the other hand, when you're anxious or negative, your body often mirrors that discomfort. Now imagine that this connection between mind and body was not just an internal experience, but one that could be shaped by the words you speak or hear. Ancient healers understood this connection, which is why words were seen as a direct path to physical healing. To them, the right words could shift your energy, align your body, and bring harmony to your health. What's fascinating is that these healing prayers weren't just random phrases. They were often part of a very structured system of belief. Specific words, prayers, or incantations were used for specific ailments. If someone had a fever, the healer might recite one set of words, and if someone had a headache, a completely different set. The rituals were carefully crafted, and the words chosen had deep, symbolic meanings. In this way, healing was also tied to the idea of balance and harmony. The words weren't just there to fix the body, they were part of a larger ritual to restore balance to the person's life, mind, body, and spirit. This idea is similar to how we sometimes approach our own health today. We may seek balance through meditation, therapy, or even affirmations, words that guide our mindset and, in turn, our physical health. Now you might wonder if these ancient healing methods were effective. In some ways, the power of words can still be seen in modern healing practices. The placebo effect, for example, shows us how the belief in a treatment can actually make a person feel better, even if that treatment has no physical properties. It's a psychological phenomenon where a person believes they are receiving treatment, and that belief alone helps them to recover. This isn't so different from the way people in the past believed in the power of healing words. The key was the belief itself, the faith in the words spoken, in the prayers offered. And sometimes that belief was enough to trigger the body's own healing mechanisms. It's not hard to see how this practice could have been so deeply ingrained in the cultures of ancient civilizations. Healing wasn't just a matter of curing symptoms, it was a matter of restoring harmony. When you look at healing from this perspective, it's not just about fixing the body, it's about aligning the mind and spirit with the natural forces of the world. The ancient healers who inscribed these tablets were not just doctors. They were spiritual guides, using words as tools to connect their patients with the deeper, unseen forces of the universe. As you reflect on this, you might find yourself thinking about your own experiences with words, how they've comforted you, how they've helped you heal emotionally or mentally. When you're feeling down or overwhelmed, have you ever found comfort in someone's kind words? Or have you ever used words yourself to uplift someone else? This is a reminder that, no matter the age or the technology, words have always been powerful. Whether on a tablet from thousands of years ago or in a conversation with a friend today, words continue to heal in ways that we may not always fully understand. So, next time you find yourself feeling unwell, perhaps it's not just the medicine. You need but a few words of encouragement, a prayer, or even a thoughtful conversation that can bring healing in ways you didn't expect. Granary number marks. Picture this, a group of farmers in the ancient world standing before a simple but significant structure, an enormous mud granary filled with the harvested crops of an entire season. The farmers are not just harvesting, they are counting. With each bundle of grain, they mark something on the walls, symbols, numbers, perhaps even tally marks, representing how much they've gathered. These marks might seem like nothing more than a way to keep track of crops, But could they have played a much bigger role in shaping the rise and fall of entire civilizations? The idea that simple numbers etched into mud could have had such an impact might seem surprising, yet in the early days of human society, they may have been the backbone of prosperity, or the harbinger of downfall. In ancient times, resources, like grain, were the lifeblood of any society. Without food, nothing else could exist. So, the ability to accurately record and manage these resources was not just a matter of practicality, it was a matter of survival. The number marks made on the walls of granaries weren't just about inventory. They were about planning for the future, securing the well-being of the community, and ensuring that the crops were distributed fairly. These early records may have seemed simple, but they had a far-reaching impact. What if the future of a dynasty, the success or failure of entire kingdoms, depended on these humble number marks? Could the rise and fall of civilizations be tied to how well early societies managed their crops? If you think about it, we still rely on numbers today in a very similar way. Every time we check the weather report to plan our day, or every time we track our finances to make sure we're managing our resources, we're doing something quite similar to what those ancient societies did. We're counting, we're recording. It's how we make sure we have enough of what we need to thrive. Now, imagine that in the ancient world, this wasn't just about surviving, it was about power. The rulers who had the best records of their crops and resources had the advantage. They could predict how much food they had for the year, plan for droughts, and ensure that their people didn't go hungry. But if the numbers were wrong, if the records were lost or miscalculated, it could mean disaster, famines, uprisings, and the collapse of entire dynasties. When we think about the importance of numbers today, it's not too hard to see how the ancient systems worked in a similar way. Have you ever felt the stress of having to keep track of something important, like managing a budget, preparing for exams, or even balancing your time between responsibilities? In those moments, numbers hold power. The right balance can lead to success, while an error could bring consequences. It's the same with crop records in ancient times. If a farmer or a ruler didn't keep track of their grain supply correctly, it could mean not enough food for the people, leading to shortages and hardship. On the other hand, a well-managed stockpile could lead to prosperity, stability, and even growth. But what about the people who were responsible for making those marks on the walls of granaries? They were the early accountants, not in the sense of modern offices and computers, but in their own way, they were the ones holding the key to how resources were allocated. Their ability to accurately measure and record could make or break a community. Imagine the power that came with knowing exactly how much grain was in stock, how much had been harvested, and how much was needed to sustain the population. The early accountants weren't just managing numbers, they were managing the future. Their work had the potential to affect everything from trade and taxes to survival and political power. It's a sobering thought to realize how much depended on the humble skill of counting. Today, we might take for granted the complex systems we have in place for managing resources, systems that use computers, algorithms, and data. But in ancient times, those simple marks on the granary walls were the foundation of something much bigger. They were the starting point for the growth of trade, economy, and governance. If we think about our own lives, we can relate to how important it is to keep track of things, whether it's your personal budget, the weather forecast, or the responsibilities you juggle every day. Imagine if you didn't keep track of those things properly. You'd feel out of control. You might even fail to meet your goals. In ancient times, failing to keep track of resources wasn't just a small mistake. It could lead to the collapse of a society. The paradox here is that something as simple as a mark on the wall could hold such immense power. A few numbers, carefully etched into clay, could determine the future of a kingdom. It's hard to fathom how much relied on these simple actions, yet it's a reminder of how deeply numbers and records are intertwined with human history. It's not just about keeping track of physical things like grain. It's about managing the invisible forces that drive society, trust, power, and the very survival of people. As we move into the modern world, we see that these same principles are still in play. Governments, corporations, and individuals all rely on accurate records to manage their resources and make decisions. What if, in our own lives, we paid closer attention to the small things we track? The way we track time, for example, or how we keep records of our goals, can have a powerful effect on our success. Maybe there's something to be said for those early accountants who understood the importance of even the smallest number. Their ability to record, plan, and manage wasn't just a practical skill. It was a vital part of how civilizations flourished or fell. It also makes you wonder how much we still rely on these ancient methods of record-keeping, even in our high-tech world. When we think of managing resources today, we might picture spreadsheets, databases, or financial apps. But in a way, they're still doing the same thing those early marks did. They're helping us keep track of what's important. Whether it's food, money, time, or even emotions, the act of counting and recording is at the core of how we manage our lives. It's the foundation of everything from budgeting to goal setting to even planning for the future. The lesson here is simple, yet profound. The small things we keep track of, the numbers we record, the marks we make, they all shape the future. Just as early accountants with their simple mud marks had the power to shape the rise and fall of entire dynasties, we too hold the power in how we manage our resources today. Whether it's the grain in our lives, the time we manage, or the goals we set, the way we track it all can determine our success or failure. So, the next time you find yourself marking down a simple note, a reminder, or a number, take a moment to appreciate how even the smallest marks can shape the future, just like they did for those ancient civilizations. Papyrus love poems. Have you ever sat under a starlit sky, feeling the cool breeze on your skin, and thought about how people in ancient times might have confessed their love? It's hard to imagine that something so personal, so intimate, could be shared in a way that still carries meaning thousands of years later. Yet there is something incredibly beautiful about the idea that hearts once confessed their deepest feelings beneath the vast desert stars, and those feelings were captured in the delicate verses of papyrus love poems. These poems, written with ink on fragile scrolls, were not just words. They were emotions, dreams, and hopes that were shared across time. Could it be that these ancient love letters are more than just romantic gestures from the past? Could they have shaped the way we think about love today? The image of love poems written on papyrus scrolls is both ancient and timeless. Imagine yourself in ancient Egypt, sitting in a quiet room, the desert wind blowing softly through an open window. You hold in your hands a piece of papyrus, a precious material made from the stems of a plant found along the Nile River. On this papyrus, a lover's words are carefully written. The ink is dark, and the handwriting is elegant, each word carefully chosen to express emotions that might otherwise be too difficult to speak aloud. These love poems weren't just expressions of affection, they were declarations, confessions, of feelings that reached beyond time and space, carried through the ages. Much like the way we might text a loved one today or write a heartfelt message, these ancient poets used words to bridge the gap between two souls. But what's fascinating is that in a world so different from our own, the power of those words still holds a certain magic. We still find ourselves captivated by the idea of love letters and poems, don't we? Even in today's fast-paced world of digital communication, there's something special about a handwritten note or a carefully composed message. It's not just the words themselves, but the thought and emotion behind them that matter. And, in the same way, those papyrus love poems were more than just ink on paper. They were a connection, a bond between two people, made even more powerful by the fact that they were preserved for eternity. Can you remember the last time someone shared a simple, thoughtful message with you? Maybe it was a note, a text, or even just a few kind words spoken in person. There's something deeply personal about receiving such a message. It can make you feel seen, heard, and understood. Now imagine that these love poems weren't just casual notes. They were the means by which lovers expressed their deepest emotions in a world where communication was far more limited than it is today. There were no phones, no instant messaging, no emails. The only way to share your heart was through carefully chosen words, often written down and sent to the one you loved. That act, that effort to put your feelings into words, is what made those ancient poems so powerful. And yet, there's something bittersweet about it too. These love poems were often written for someone far away, someone who might never even receive the letter. They were sometimes written by lovers who could only dream of being together, whose hearts were separated by distance or circumstance. Much like today, when we send messages to people across the globe, these ancient lovers poured their emotions into words that could transcend time and space. But unlike today's digital communication, which is often fleeting and temporary, these words were preserved for centuries. They were immortalized in papyrus, a material that would carry them through the ages, long after the people who wrote them were gone. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that something as personal as love could be captured in writing, preserved for eternity, and then rediscovered by future generations. What do we really leave behind when we share our feelings with others? In a way, we leave pieces of ourselves, small fragments of our hearts, sealed in words. Those ancient love poems, written on papyrus, are just like the messages we send today. They are a way to capture moments, emotions, and feelings that we can't always express in person. They are a way to say, "I love you," even when the distance between us feels too great. Love is a timeless emotion, but the way we express it evolves. In ancient times, people would write their deepest emotions on scrolls and keep them close to their hearts. Today we may use texts, emails, or social media posts to express our feelings, but the core idea remains the same. We want to connect with others, to share our love, and to make sure the people we care about know how much they mean to us. And, much like the lovers of ancient Egypt, we sometimes find ourselves looking for ways to preserve those feelings, whether it's through a photograph, a letter, or even a song. But there's something unique about the way those ancient love poems were crafted. They weren't just quick messages thrown together. They were deeply thoughtful, carefully composed works of art. Each word was chosen with care, each line with purpose. These poems were not just about love, they were about the very essence of human connection. In a world where communication was more difficult, these poets understood that the written word held immense power. It was the closest thing to capturing a piece of the soul and sending it across the distance. Perhaps this is why the love poems of ancient Egypt continue to captivate us today. They are not just relics of the past. They are a reminder of how deeply we have always felt love and how powerful words can be in expressing that love. Have you ever thought about how our words shape the way we connect with others? Whether you're writing a letter, sending a message, or simply speaking to someone, the words you choose can have a profound effect on the relationship. They can bring people closer, ease pain, or heal a wound. Much like the love poems from ancient Egypt, the right words, shared at the right time, can create bonds that last a lifetime. It's a reminder that love is not just about what we feel. It's about what we express. And when we express it thoughtfully, with care and intention, it can transcend time and space just as those papyrus love poems have done. So, as you think about these ancient love poems, consider how you express your feelings today. Do you take the time to write a thoughtful message or a poem? Or do you let the busyness of life get in the way of truly expressing what's in your heart? The love poems of the past remind us that it's worth the effort, because in the end, it's not just the love we feel, but the love we share that makes all the difference. Animal cult cities. Imagine a world where you walk through a bustling city, but instead of people gathering at marketplaces, there are groups of animals roaming freely. Cats, ibis, and jackals, all revered as sacred beings, worshipped as gods. It might seem strange to us today, yet in ancient civilizations, this was reality. People didn't just admire animals from a distance, they believed these creatures held divine powers and played key roles in shaping their lives. It's a fascinating thought. Why would entire cities rise around the worship of animals? How did these creatures become symbols of gods, revered and even protected as sacred beings? And more importantly, What can we learn from the fact that humans have connected so deeply to the natural world in this way? Take a moment to think about the animals you've encountered in your daily life. Perhaps it's a bird you see every morning, a pet you care for, or even an animal that appears in a dream. Animals have always been present in our lives, but there's something different about how ancient cultures viewed them. In Egypt, for example, cats were so highly revered that harming one could result in severe punishment, even death. The Egyptians saw cats as protectors, as guardians of the home, and as embodiments of grace and independence. In their eyes, these animals were not just pets. They were divine creatures, capable of influencing the course of human life. It's easy to see how animals like cats, with their elegance and mysterious behavior, could inspire such reverence. But what about the jackals? What made these creatures worthy of being gods? Perhaps it's because they were often associated with death and the afterlife, symbolizing a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The ancient Egyptians viewed the jackal as a guide for souls transitioning into the next life, and their gods, like Anubis, were depicted with the head of a jackal. Imagine, then, living in a time where the jackal wasn't just a wild animal roaming the desert, it was a divine figure leading you to your next journey. What a powerful and mysterious idea that would have been for those people. These beliefs weren't limited to just Egypt. In many other ancient cultures, animals were also seen as divine beings. The ibis, for example, was sacred to Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing. In some ways, the ibis became a symbol of intellectual power and the pursuit of knowledge. Can you relate to this in modern life? Think about how certain animals are associated with different traits or qualities today. Maybe you associate owls with wisdom or eagles with freedom. Our modern society still holds animals in a special place, but back then, their symbolic importance was so much deeper. Have you ever felt a connection to an animal in your life? Maybe you have a pet that brings you comfort, or perhaps you've had a moment where an animal seemed to understand you in a way that humans couldn't. There's a strange and powerful connection that many people feel with animals. It's almost as if animals can communicate with us in a way words can't. In ancient times, this feeling of connection was taken even further. People didn't just feel a bond with these creatures. They believed that they were channels to the divine, and by honoring these animals, they could gain favor or protection from the gods. What does this tell us about our own relationship with animals? On a fundamental level, it shows that humans have always been connected to the natural world. We look to animals for guidance, strength, and even comfort. There's something instinctual about this. Think about how nature makes us feel. A walk through a forest, a moment spent watching the ocean, or simply observing the creatures around us can bring a sense of peace and awe. It's almost as if, deep down, we recognize that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. Ancient people didn't have the same scientific understanding of nature that we do today, but they still found deep meaning in their relationship with animals. This belief system also reveals something about human nature itself. When we worshipped animals, we weren't just acknowledging their physical presence, we were embracing something deeper about the mysteries of life and death, the cycles of nature, and the unknown. Every animal had its own symbolism, its own significance, something that transcended the physical form and spoke to our spiritual needs. And perhaps that's still true today in some ways. When we think about the animals we admire or respect, there's often something more to it than just the creature itself. We associate certain animals with qualities we strive for or seek in our own lives: strength, independence, wisdom, or protection. The paradox here is how something as simple as an animal can take on such deep significance in our lives. A cat, a jackal, an ibis, creatures that might otherwise be seen as ordinary, everyday animals, became the focal points of entire belief systems. They were treated not just as companions, but as sacred beings, embodying the powers of the divine. Today, we might not worship animals in the same way, but we still find ourselves drawn to them in a deep and meaningful way. The bond between humans and animals has endured across time, evolving but never disappearing. This relationship also connects to something larger in our modern lives. As we move forward in the digital age, we often feel disconnected from the natural world. We're surrounded by technology, information, and constant stimulation. Yet, it's in the quiet moments with nature and animals that we often find true solace. In a way, the ancient practice of animal worship might remind us that we need to reconnect with the natural world, to listen to what it's trying to tell us, and to remember that even in our modern lives, animals still hold a special place in our hearts. The animals that were once seen as divine are still with us, not as gods, but as symbols of the deeper truths of life that we sometimes forget to appreciate. What can we learn from the animal cults of the past? Perhaps it's that we should never underestimate the importance of the natural world in shaping who we are. Whether we worshipped animals as gods or simply admired them from afar, they were always there to teach us something valuable about ourselves, about life, and about the mysteries of the universe. Maybe, just maybe, it's time for us to rediscover that connection, to see the divine in the creatures that share our world. Labyrinth, subterranean maze. Have you ever wandered through a place so complex and mysterious that it felt like you might never find your way out? Imagine walking through a maze of twisting corridors, with each turn leading to another unexpected passage. In ancient times, such labyrinths were not just imagined, they were built. One of the most famous of these labyrinths was said to have been designed by Daedalus, the legendary craftsman from Greek mythology, who created the maze that held the Minotaur. But here's the truly intriguing question. Could this mythological maze have inspired real-world labyrinths, such as the hidden passages deep beneath Egypt's ancient monuments? It's a curious thought. We often think of labyrinths as myth, fantasy, and stories told around campfires. Yet, beneath the sands of Egypt, archaeologists have uncovered traces of such labyrinthine passages, deep corridors hidden from the world, and complex structures that seem to have been designed for purposes we still don't fully understand. Could it be that the idea of the labyrinth, so rich in myth, actually influenced the design of these ancient structures? What if Daedalus's mythical maze wasn't just a story, but a reflection of the fascination and mystery that humans have, always held for hidden paths, secret chambers, and the unexplored? Imagine standing in front of a pyramid, the towering structure that has stood the test of time. You can see the sharp geometric lines, the smooth stone blocks that have been carefully placed to create something both monumental and awe-inspiring. But beneath the pyramid, there may be something even more incredible, a network of tunnels, rooms, and hidden passageways. These labyrinths are not easy to find. They were made to be secretive, perhaps even impossible to navigate without deep knowledge of their layout. It's hard not to be fascinated by the idea that these ancient builders, much like Daedalus, might have been creating something more than just a tomb or a temple. Perhaps they were creating a puzzle, a mystery meant to be solved, or perhaps it was meant to remain unsolved, a reflection of the ancient desire to guard sacred knowledge or power. Does this remind you of any situation in your own life? Maybe there's a time when you felt lost, trying to find your way through something that seemed confusing or impossible to understand, whether it was a difficult decision, a challenging exam, or even a relationship. Sometimes life feels like a maze with twists and turns that lead us deeper into uncertainty. But just like a labyrinth, there are moments when you stumble upon something unexpectedly beautiful, an insight, a solution, or even a person who helps guide you along the way. There's something about being lost that makes finding your way back even more meaningful. This metaphor of the maze, of being lost and then finding your way, can also be seen in the context of mental health. Often, people feel as though they are navigating through a maze of their own thoughts, emotions, and experiences. It can feel disorienting, overwhelming, and sometimes impossible to find the right path. But there is something very human about this experience. We all face moments where we feel like we're in a labyrinth, trying to make sense of the world around us, trying to find answers to the questions that puzzle us. In a way, these ancient labyrinths symbolize the journey we all take in our lives. A journey through confusion, uncertainty, and ultimately, discovery. Now, Let's think about the concept of hidden knowledge for a moment. The labyrinth, with its twisting passages and hidden chambers, might have served as more than just a physical puzzle. It could have been a symbol of knowledge itself, something that requires effort, time, and determination to uncover. In ancient times, knowledge was often guarded, reserved for those deemed worthy or capable of understanding its deeper meaning. In Egypt, as in Greece, secrets were often hidden beneath layers of stone in chambers that only a few could access. The idea that knowledge could be locked away, buried deep within these labyrinths, is a powerful one. And in some ways it reflects how we approach learning and growth today. Whether it's mastering a skill, learning a new subject, or even trying to understand ourselves better, the process can feel like navigating a maze. It's never linear, and often we find ourselves retracing our steps only to discover something new and valuable along the way. In a broader sense, this idea of hidden knowledge and the maze of life connects to how we approach the mysteries of the world. Just as the labyrinths of Egypt and Greece were once thought to hold secrets, the world around us is full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. Whether it's the hidden depths of our own minds, the unexplored territories of science, or the ancient ruins waiting to tell their stories, there's always something more to uncover. We may not always understand the path ahead, but like the ancient builders, we are constantly creating our own labyrinths, sometimes unknowingly, as we navigate the complexities of life. Have you ever felt a sense of wonder when discovering something hidden? Maybe it was a forgotten memory, a hidden talent, or an undiscovered part of a city you didn't know existed. That feeling of uncovering something secret or previously unknown is part of the human experience, and it ties us back to the idea of the labyrinth. The ancient Egyptians, like the people of Greece, understood that life itself is full of mysteries. They created spaces that reflected this understanding, spaces designed not just for function but for a deeper purpose, to provoke thought, to challenge the mind, and perhaps to encourage people to question their own assumptions about the world. The paradox of the labyrinth is this: it can feel both confining and freeing at the same time. On the one hand, it's a place where you might feel trapped, unable to see the way forward, but on the other hand, it's a space that offers endless possibilities for exploration, discovery, and growth. This mirrors our own experiences. Life is full of challenges and uncertainties, but it's also filled with opportunities to learn, grow, and discover new paths. Each turn, each decision brings us closer to understanding, to uncovering the hidden parts of ourselves and the world around us. In a sense, we are all like the ancient architects, designing our own labyrinths in the way we live, think, and interact with the world. We may not be building literal passageways under the earth, but we are constantly shaping our own paths, trying to find our way through the maze of life. And just as the ancient builders of Egypt may have sought to create something enduring, something that would stand the test of time, we too are seeking meaning, understanding, and a sense of purpose that will last. So what does this ancient maze mean for us today? Perhaps it's a reminder that even in our modern world, there are still mysteries to explore, puzzles to solve, and secrets to uncover. Whether it's through a historical discovery or a personal journey, we are all navigating our own labyrinths. And just as Daedalus created his labyrinth with purpose, we too must seek to find meaning in the winding paths of our lives, trusting that, in the end, we will uncover something valuable, something profound, and perhaps even something we never expected. Gold leaf dentistry. Imagine walking into a royal court, surrounded by elegantly dressed nobles and majestic architecture. Yet, among all the beauty, one detail stands out: the gleam of a king or a queen's smile. But this isn't just any smile. It's one that shines brighter than the golden walls around them. What if I told you that thousands of years ago, pharaohs were flashing golden smiles at court? Ancient Egyptians, long before modern dentistry, were using gold to repair their teeth, turning dental work into an art form that combined both practicality and luxury. It's a surprising thought, isn't it? The idea that something as personal as a smile could hold so much value in ancient civilizations. Golden teeth are often thought of as a modern luxury, seen in wealthy individuals or flashy pop culture references. But thousands of years ago, in ancient Egypt, gold was more than just a precious metal. It was a symbol of power, beauty, and immortality. Pharaohs and nobility weren't just concerned with having functional teeth. They wanted to make sure their smiles reflected their status and their eternal legacy. They didn't rely on simple fillings like we do today. No, they went as far as to cover entire teeth or replace lost ones with solid gold. It was as if their teeth were not only functional, but also an emblem of their divine rule and their place in the afterlife. It might sound strange, yet it also makes sense when you think about it. The desire to have a perfect smile is not a new thing. Today, many of us visit dentists to fix chipped or decayed teeth, sometimes opting for gold crowns or other cosmetic dentistry treatments. These choices, driven by vanity or the desire to project an image, aren't as different from the ancient practices as we might think. We often associate a smile with self-confidence and beauty. For the pharaohs, a golden smile was more than just vanity. It was about showing their wealth, power, and readiness to face the gods, with the belief that such an appearance would help them transition smoothly into the afterlife. How often do we go out of our way to ensure we're putting our best face forward? Whether it's a job interview, a first date, or simply meeting new people, we all understand the importance of our appearance. A smile can change how people see us. It can convey friendliness, trustworthiness, and confidence. In the same way, the ancient Egyptians used gold not just as a tool for survival, but as a statement of their eternal greatness. It's interesting to think about how something so small, like a smile, could hold such meaning. It's an example of how humans have always used their physical appearance to express larger themes about their identity and status. But there's another layer to this practice that goes beyond aesthetics. What if these gold teeth were also a way for the ancient Egyptians to face their mortality? After all, the Egyptians were incredibly concerned with the afterlife. They believed that their physical bodies, in some form, would continue to exist after death. This belief led to elaborate burial practices and a focus on preserving the body. What if the golden smile, in a way, was a way to take the beauty of life with them into the next world? Gold, being a metal that doesn't tarnish, symbolized eternal life, an unending connection to the divine. So it wasn't just about having a shiny, impressive smile in life, but about making sure that smile would endure for eternity. The idea of immortality is something that has fascinated people for as long as humanity has existed. We see it in many cultures, from the ancient Egyptians to the Greek myths, where gods and heroes were depicted as being ageless and perfect. Our fascination with immortality shows up in our modern-day obsessions too, whether it's through technology, medicine, or the search for youthfulness. We want to preserve ourselves, our beauty, and our energy, hoping that somehow we can defy the limitations of time. In a way, the golden smile of the pharaohs can be seen as a symbol of this desire, a physical representation of the wish to remain untarnished, unspoiled by time or death. Consider the concept of preservation in our own lives. When we look at old photographs or mementos, we often experience a sense of nostalgia. We want to hold on to moments, people, and memories as though they can somehow remain frozen in time. The ancient Egyptians did this too, but their preservation went beyond memories. It was about ensuring that they remained powerful and radiant long after their physical bodies were gone. Their golden smiles were a reminder that, even in death, they would be remembered as perfect, shining beings. This notion connects to how we often preserve parts of ourselves in ways we can control. We take photos, we write journals, we create digital records of our lives, hoping that the essence of who we are will live on even after we are gone. It's fascinating to think that these practices of self-preservation, whether through physical means or through the act of remembering, have existed for thousands of years. The golden teeth of the pharaohs were, in a way, an early form of human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered, to be seen as something more than just mortal. And, while we no longer use gold to repair our teeth in quite the same way, the underlying desire to present our best selves is still deeply embedded in our culture. Our smiles, our appearance, and even our social media presence are all part of this ongoing effort to shape how others see us and how we hope to be remembered. But beyond the vanity and symbolism of gold teeth, there is a deeper question about the nature of health itself. How do we care for our bodies, and what does that care say about our values and beliefs? In ancient Egypt, gold teeth weren't just an aesthetic choice. They were an investment in health, longevity, and status. In a time before modern dentistry, gold was a durable, precious material that could withstand the test of time. So, in a way, these tooth repairs were not just about beauty. They were practical decisions to preserve the function and strength of the teeth. In today's world, we make similar choices. When we go to the dentist, we may choose materials that are designed for durability: crowns, fillings, braces, each one serving a practical purpose. But at the same time, there's a level of personal choice involved. We have options that allow us to control how we look, and that control is often intertwined with our identity. The process of choosing how to repair or enhance our teeth, whether it's through gold, porcelain, or something else, reflects our cultural emphasis on appearance, health, and the image we want to project into the world. The paradox of gold leaf dentistry, then, is this. While we may view ancient practices through the lens of our modern values, they were actually driven by a desire to preserve something much larger than the self: immortality, divinity, and legacy. Just as we today care for our teeth, our bodies, and our image, the ancient Egyptians were doing the same, only with the added layer of seeking eternal life. And in the end, we are all striving for something similar: a way to be remembered, a way to maintain our sense of self, and a way to connect with something greater than ourselves. So, next time you smile, think about what that smile might represent. It's more than just a moment of joy. It's a reflection of your identity, your beliefs, and your desire to leave a lasting impression, just like the golden smiles of the Pharaohs. Your smile tells a story, and perhaps that story is one of timelessness, of seeking to preserve the best parts of yourself for the world to see. Star map ceilings. Imagine lying beneath a sky filled with stars, each one shining brightly, guiding you through the vastness of the universe. Now picture yourself inside a tomb, thousands of years old, staring up at a ceiling decorated with intricate star maps. These maps aren't just random constellations. They're carefully designed, meticulously drawn, and placed with intention. Could these celestial charts have been more than just decoration? What if they were guides, not just for the living, but for the souls of the departed, helping them navigate the journey to the afterlife? It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? To think that our ancestors, thousands of years ago, looked up at the same stars we see today and used them to chart a course for eternity. The ancient Egyptians, for example, believed that the journey to the afterlife was just as important as life itself. For them, death was not an end, but a continuation of the soul's journey. They knew that the stars played a significant role. In this journey, the heavens were not just distant lights, they were powerful guides. For the departed, the stars were considered pathways to the afterlife, and the tombs were seen as spaces where the deceased would make their transition. The ceilings of these tombs were often adorned with star maps, carefully illustrating the constellations that would help the soul navigate this unknown journey. Isn't it strange how, even today, we look up at the stars and feel a sense of wonder, as if they hold answers to questions we haven't even asked yet? The stars seem so far away, yet they pull us in, inviting us to dream, to question, and to wonder. In a similar way, the ancient Egyptians saw the stars as more than just celestial bodies. They were navigational tools, guides for the soul, ensuring that the deceased could find their way to a peaceful afterlife. Imagine how comforting that must have been for people who lived in such a challenging world, where death could feel like an uncertain journey. To know that the stars, those same stars they saw every night, would light the way for their loved ones' souls, offering a sense of reassurance and connection that transcended life and death. In a way, the idea of using the stars as guides is something that still resonates with us today. Think about how, in everyday life, we often turn to familiar patterns and signs to help us navigate difficult situations. Whether it's seeking advice from loved ones, looking for signs in nature, or following a routine to get us through the day, we all rely on some form of guidance. In the same way, the star maps in tombs served as a comforting and reliable guide for the journey ahead. They weren't just there for decoration. They were there to provide direction, to ensure that the soul would not get lost in the vastness of the afterlife. The paradox lies in how we continue to seek direction, even in a world that feels more connected than ever. We live in an age where technology has provided us with tools that can help us navigate almost anything. From GPS to the internet, we have endless resources to find our way. Yet there's still a sense of longing for something deeper, something more meaningful. When we look at a map or a compass, we're not just searching for a physical destination. We're searching for purpose, for meaning, for a path that aligns with who we are and what we hope to become. The star maps in ancient tombs were more than just practical tools. They were symbolic of this universal human need for guidance, both in life and in death. This desire for direction also touches on a deeper theme, the fear of the unknown. Just like the ancient Egyptians, we face the unknown every day. It could be the uncertainty of the future, the fear of making the wrong decisions, or the inevitable journey toward death that awaits us all. But in the same way that the stars were seen as a source of guidance, we often look to something greater than ourselves for reassurance. Whether it's religion, philosophy, or even our own beliefs about the universe, we seek ways to navigate the unknown, to find our way through the darkness. The stars, as ancient guides, represent a source of comfort in the face of uncertainty. In modern times, the sky still holds a certain kind of magic for us. We often look up at the stars and feel a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. Even if we don't consciously think of them as guides, they still carry a deep symbolism. We talk about staring at the stars when we're dreaming, wishing, or contemplating our place in the world. In that quiet moment of looking up, there's a sense of calm and possibility, as though the universe is quietly reminding us that we're part of something bigger. This feeling, though not as literal as the star maps in tombs, connects us to an ancient practice of finding meaning in the cosmos. The star maps, then, can be seen as a metaphor for the way we all seek meaning in our lives. Just like the ancient Egyptians, we all face a journey, whether it's the journey of self-discovery, the path toward our goals, or the final journey that we all must face one day. In moments of uncertainty, we look for something to guide us, to show us the way. For the Egyptians, the stars were a literal guide. For us, they represent the idea that we can always find guidance if we're open to it, if we look closely enough. It's a reminder that we're never truly lost, even when the path ahead seems unclear. There is always something to help us find our way. So next time you find yourself gazing up at the night sky, think about the ancient souls who looked up for guidance. Reflect on how we, too, continue to search for meaning, direction, and understanding. The star maps in tombs were not just decorations. They were symbols of a deeper truth, one that connects us to the past and the future, that the journey is not only about the destination but also about finding our way, step by step, with the stars guiding us along the path. Whether in ancient tombs or in our modern lives, the stars remind us that, no matter how dark the road may seem, there's always light to guide us home. Philosopher-priest texts. Imagine for a moment sitting in a dimly lit room, the only light coming from the flicker of a small flame. The air is thick with the scent of wax and ink, and you hold in your hands an ancient scroll, its edges worn with time. As you read the words, you can almost feel the weight of the thoughts it carries. These aren't just ordinary words. They're pieces of wisdom, insights into life, the universe, and everything in between. Now, picture the person who wrote this scroll. A priest, perhaps, someone who devoted their life to both spiritual guidance and the search for deeper meaning. Was it by torchlight that they pondered the great mysteries of existence? And more importantly, could these thoughts have been the key to understanding the complexities of life? This thought takes us back to a time when wisdom wasn't as easily accessible as it is today. In our modern world, we have books, the internet, podcasts, and a wealth of knowledge at our fingertips. But in ancient times, wisdom wasn't so easily shared. It was hidden in scrolls, whispered by priests, and passed down through generations. These priest philosophers, those who served both as spiritual leaders and thinkers, were often the ones tasked with uncovering life's greatest questions. They spent hours, days, or even years reflecting on the nature of existence, the meaning of life, and the mysteries that lay beyond the human experience. And often, it was in the quiet solitude of their chambers, by the glow of a flickering flame, that these profound thoughts came to life. Have you ever found yourself contemplating the bigger questions of life? The ones that seem to float just beyond our grasp, like wisps of smoke in the air. We've all had moments of deep reflection, whether it's during a quiet walk in nature, staring up at the stars, or simply lying in bed before sleep takes over. It's in these quiet moments that our minds wander to the unknown, the things we cannot see or touch but can feel in the very depths of our being. For the ancient priests, these moments were not only personal, they were sacred. They saw themselves as the bridge between humanity and the divine, and in this role, they were entrusted with some of the most profound questions of all. Think of a time when you've sought answers. Maybe it was during a difficult time in your life, perhaps after a breakup, a loss, or a personal struggle. In those moments, we often turn inward, searching for meaning, purpose, or understanding. For many, this process is not just intellectual, it's deeply emotional and spiritual. The priests of ancient civilizations experienced this too, but they had the added responsibility of not just seeking answers for themselves, but for their communities. They were expected to understand the divine, the natural world, and the connections between the two. And so, they turned to philosophy, not in the modern sense, but as a way of thinking about the world, of trying to make sense of its mysteries. This idea of philosophy as a tool for both personal and communal understanding is something that still resonates with us today. We might not sit by torchlight or write on scrolls, but we continue to seek out wisdom in various forms. We turn to books, podcasts, or even conversations with others to help us make sense of life's challenges. But the paradox lies in the fact that, despite all the knowledge we have at our disposal, many of the big questions of life remain just as elusive as they were thousands of years ago. What is the purpose of life? Why do we exist? What happens after death? These questions continue to occupy our minds and hearts, no matter how much we learn or how much time passes. Perhaps one of the reasons these questions remain so persistent is because they touch on something fundamental about the human experience: the search for meaning. It's something we all crave, regardless of our background or beliefs. We want to understand why things happen the way they do, why we face hardship, and what our lives truly mean in the grand scheme of things. The ancient priests, with their scrolls and sacred texts, were no different. They sought meaning in a world that could often feel chaotic and unpredictable. Their wisdom wasn't just about understanding the divine, it was about understanding themselves, their communities, and their place in the world. In many ways, this quest for understanding is a shared experience. Think of the last time you faced a tough decision or a confusing situation. You likely found yourself searching for answers, whether through self-reflection, advice from others, or simply by observing the world around you. We all face moments of uncertainty, times when we seek something beyond ourselves to help us navigate life. The priest philosophers of ancient times were no different. They may have been tasked with guiding others, but at their core, they too were seeking the same answers we all look for. This desire for meaning, for understanding, is not confined to the realm of philosophy or religion. It touches every aspect of our lives. It shapes our relationships, our careers, and even the way we approach our mental health. In times of stress or uncertainty, we often turn inward to reflect on what truly matters. We seek guidance, whether through prayer, meditation, or simply by talking with someone we trust. This process of seeking, of searching for answers, is part of the human condition, one that has persisted throughout history. Just as the priests of the past used their wisdom scrolls to reflect on life's mysteries, we, too, use our own methods. to find clarity in a world that often feels overwhelming. What's interesting is how the methods of seeking answers have evolved over time, but the questions themselves remain remarkably consistent. In the past, priests and philosophers used sacred texts, scrolls, and rituals to explore life's big questions. Today, we have a multitude of tools at our disposal: psychology, self-help books, technology, and even artificial intelligence. But the questions about life, death, and purpose haven't changed. In many ways, we are still engaging in the same search for wisdom, just with different tools. And yet, despite all our advances, we still find ourselves pondering the same mysteries. The paradox here is that, even in a world where knowledge is more accessible than ever, we remain just as unsure about the deepest questions of existence. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps it's not about finding all the answers, but about continuing to seek, to ask, and to reflect. Just as the ancient priests once sat by torchlight, pondering the mysteries of the universe, we too continue this age-old tradition in our own way. We search for meaning, for purpose, for guidance, and in doing so, we connect with something much larger than ourselves. So the next time you find yourself pondering the big questions of life, remember that you are not alone in this quest for understanding. Whether by torchlight or under the glow of your phone screen, we are all searching for meaning in a world that can sometimes feel confusing and uncertain. And perhaps, just like the priests of old, it's in that search itself that we find the answers we truly seek. Broken royal statues. Imagine walking through the ruins of an ancient city, the air thick with the scent of history. Among the weathered stones you find a statue, a once grand representation of a king, now headless and broken. The statue, though damaged, still carries the weight of its former glory. You can almost feel the power it once exuded. But as you stand there, staring at its broken form, a question arises. Was this act of destruction a result of a violent revolt, a moment of rebellion against the ruler it once represented? Or was it a ritual, a symbolic act meant to mark the king's passing, or perhaps even a necessary step in maintaining the balance of power? The mystery of the headless king stirs something deep inside us, something about power, history, and the strange rituals of humanity. This question of broken royal statues is not just an ancient mystery, it's one that speaks to our understanding of power and the way we relate to the symbols of authority. When we think of a king or a queen, we often picture them as figures of immense power, symbols of leadership and order. Their statues stand tall in the city centers, reminding people of their rule and influence. But what happens when those statues are broken, particularly when their heads are removed? It's almost as if the very essence of their power has been stripped away. And yet, this is not a modern phenomenon. In ancient cultures, it was common for royal statues to be destroyed or defaced in one way or another. In some cases, it was done as an act of defiance, a rebellion against a ruler who had fallen out of favor. In other cases, it may have been part of a ritual, a way to honor the passing of a monarch or to mark a significant shift in the political landscape. We've all seen statues in our own lives, whether it's a monument in a park, a bust in a museum, or even a photograph of a famous figure. Statues are often built to immortalize someone, to keep their memory alive long after they are gone. But what happens when those statues are broken? What does it mean when the image of someone who once held power is reduced to rubble? In a way, it feels like we're witnessing the fragility of human legacy. No matter how powerful or influential a person might have been in their time, their memory can still be shattered, erased, or altered by the passage of time or by the will of others. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? That even the most towering figures, the ones we hold in high regard, are subject to the forces of change and destruction. Take a moment to think about your own life. We all have symbols of our achievements, moments that we want to remember and hold on to. Maybe it's a trophy you won as a child, a photograph that captures a happy moment, or a piece of art that speaks to something deep within you. These objects are often more than just items. They represent something meaningful, something you've worked hard for, or something that marks an important milestone. Now, imagine those symbols were suddenly destroyed. What would that feel like? Would you still hold on to the memory, or would it somehow feel less significant? less real. It's a strange feeling, isn't it, to see something that represents power or importance reduced to nothing more than a pile of rubble. For ancient civilizations, statues weren't just decorative pieces. They were powerful symbols. They represented gods, kings, and queens, and were often seen as physical manifestations of the divine or royal presence. To destroy a statue, particularly one of a ruler, could have profound implications. Was it an act of rebellion, a way for the people to express their anger or dissatisfaction with the ruler, or was it a symbolic act, part of a ritual to mark a transition or change in leadership? In some cases, it was a combination of both. In times of political upheaval or revolution, the destruction of royal statues could serve as a powerful statement. 1. That said, the old order was no longer valid and needed to be replaced. But not all instances of statue destruction were the result of conflict or rebellion. In some cultures, removing the head of a statue was part of a ritualistic practice. It could have been a way of symbolizing the passing of the ruler, a way of marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. The head, after all, is often seen as the seat of power, the symbol of the person's identity and authority. Removing it could signify the end of that authority, a kind of symbolic death. This idea is echoed in many cultures, where the removal or destruction of an image or statue is seen as a way to release the spirit of the person or to sever their influence from the world. This paradox of broken statues, whether through rebellion or ritual, touches on something fundamental about the human experience, the way we relate to power, legacy, and memory. We all know that time has a way of erasing things, whether it's the physical decay of a statue or the fading of memories, but we also know that these things leave a mark. A broken statue might lose its head, but it still stands as a reminder of what was once there. Even when the power behind the symbol is gone, the symbol itself can continue to exist, telling its own story. In this way, broken statues are both a sign of the fragility of power and a testament to the persistence of memory. They remind us that no matter how much we try to preserve something, whether it's a person, an idea, or a legacy, time has a way of changing things. As you reflect on the image of the headless king, think about the symbols in your own life. What are the things that represent your own sense of power or identity? And what happens when those symbols are broken or altered? Do you feel a sense of loss? Or do you find a way to move forward, carrying the memory with you in a different form? It's a powerful question, one that speaks to the heart of what it means to be human. Just like the broken statues of ancient kings, we too are fragile, and the symbols of our lives are subject to the forces of time, change, and even destruction. But just as those statues continue to stand, even in their brokenness, we too continue to carry the stories of our lives, even when the symbols of our power and identity are no longer intact. Perhaps the real lesson of the broken royal statues is that power, like everything else, is temporary. It is shaped by the times, the people, and the forces that surround it. But even when that power is lost, the symbols of it, whether in the form of statues, memories, or legacies, remain. They serve as a reminder that, no matter what happens, history continues to be written, even in the broken pieces of what was once whole. And in those broken pieces, there is still meaning, still a story to be told. Ivory game boards. Imagine for a moment stepping into an ancient palace, its floors cold and smooth beneath your feet. On the ground, an intricate game board is laid out, each square carefully etched into the surface, a pattern so deliberate it almost seems to hum with a purpose. The game being played is called Senet, a game that was not just a pastime for the people of ancient Egypt. As you observe, the players do not seem simply to be passing the time. Instead, they appear deeply focused, their moves measured with a quiet seriousness, almost as if the fate of their lives, or their afterlife, depends on the roll of the dice and the spaces they land on. In this world, every turn holds more significance than just winning or losing. Was this game more than just a way to spend time? Could it have been an ancient gamble? One not only for earthly rewards, but for something much grander. Control over one's journey in the afterlife? This thought lingers, as mysterious as the game itself, leaving us to wonder how much of our modern-day choices are also tied to something deeper, something beyond what we can see. Senet, as a game, was a staple of ancient Egyptian culture. Found in the tombs of the elite, its presence in palaces and burial chambers speaks volumes. It wasn't just a game, it had significance. Picture the royal courts, where members of the royal family or the nobles sat playing senet on elaborate ivory boards, perhaps for hours at a time. To the modern observer, it might appear as nothing more than a casual activity, similar to how we might play chess or checkers. But to those who lived in ancient Egypt, this game had a deeper connection to the spiritual world. The game's board was often seen as a symbolic representation of the journey one's soul would take in the afterlife, with each square representing a stage or challenge to overcome. This raises an intriguing thought. Were the ancient players truly gambling for fate, hoping that their success in the game would somehow influence their journey in the next world? It's not hard to imagine that, like us, they sought control over the uncertainties of life. After all, even in today's world, games and competitions often represent something bigger than just the immediate outcome. Whether it's sports, betting, or even day-to-day decisions, we often tie our hopes to the idea that success in one area of life can lead to success in another, more important area. Just think about how we approach exams. For many, these tests are not just about demonstrating knowledge. They often feel like a wager on our future. A good score can mean a scholarship, a job, or the respect of others. Similarly, in the ancient world, senet may have represented a way to manipulate the forces of the unseen to secure a peaceful passage to the afterlife. The paradox, however, lies in the fact that while the game seems to offer hope and control, its outcome is determined by chance. Just as our modern-day decisions often feel influenced by randomness, we make choices in our everyday lives. Some big and some small, yet so much of what happens afterward feels out of our control. Whether it's the weather on the day of an important exam, the unexpected relationship dynamics at work, or even the roll of the dice in a game, there are countless moments in our lives where the outcome is shaped not by us, but by forces we can't predict. And so, as we look back to the ancient players of senet, we find an echo of our own human desire to understand and influence the unknown. Think about a moment in your life when you made a choice, only to feel as though it led to something entirely unexpected. Perhaps you studied hard for a test, thinking your success was guaranteed, only to find that something beyond your control led to failure. Or maybe you took a chance on a new opportunity, hoping for success, but instead faced challenges you weren't prepared for. In these moments, we often feel as if our fate is a game being played, with no clear rules and no clear winner. Yet, just like those ancient players, we continue to play, hoping that with each move we might tilt the odds in our favor. This feeling is deeply human. It connects us to those who played senet thousands of years ago. There's also something particularly intriguing about the idea of the afterlife in the context of senet. The Egyptians believed that the game's board mirrored the trials one would face after death, as the soul navigated its way through obstacles on its journey to the afterlife. Each roll of the dice was seen as a step toward achieving eternal life. The idea of gambling with the afterlife may seem strange, but in a way, it makes sense when you consider how we approach decisions in our own lives. We often weigh our actions against potential consequences, hoping that we can steer our destiny in the right direction. Whether it's moral choices or personal goals, we are all in some way gambling with our own future, hoping that the risks we take will lead us to a better place, whether in this life or beyond. This paradox of control and chance touches on much more than the ancient world. It speaks to a broader human experience, our deep need to understand fate, to find meaning, and to influence the outcomes of our lives. As we navigate the uncertainties of our own journeys, we are all, in a way, players in a game where the stakes sometimes feel higher than we can comprehend. How often do we find ourselves wishing we had a map, a clear path that could show us where we are going? How often do we wonder if the choices we make now will determine our future in ways we cannot yet see? The mystery of Senet, then, is not just a relic of the past. It is a mirror reflecting our own struggles with uncertainty, fate, and the desire to control what is ultimately beyond us. In this way, the game of Senet isn't just a game. It's a reminder of how we, too, are playing with forces much greater than ourselves. Just as the ancient Egyptians relied on chance to secure their afterlife, we too must accept that some things in life are beyond our control. No matter how much we plan, how hard we work, there are always elements of randomness that shape our outcomes. And yet, like those ancient players, we continue to roll the dice, take our turns, and hope that, in the end, our journey will be a successful one. As you reflect on this, think about the ways you gamble with fate in your own life. What are the choices you've made, the risks you've taken, that have shaped your journey? And just like the ancient players of Senet, do you sometimes feel as though your fate is determined by something beyond your control? It's a comforting thought, in some ways, that we're not alone in this. For thousands of years, humans have sought to make sense of the mysteries of life through games, rituals, and beliefs. And in this pursuit, we have discovered that even in our most uncertain moments, there is meaning to be found, even if it's hidden beneath the surface of the game. Blue faience beads. Imagine for a moment holding a small piece of jewelry in your hand, smooth, radiant, and glowing with an almost magical quality. It's a small bead, nothing particularly remarkable in size, yet it seems to pulse with a life of its own. This isn't just a piece of decoration. It is something much deeper, something ancient. The Egyptians, long ago, crafted these beads from a material known as blue faience, a kind of glazed ceramic that shimmers with a striking blue. But why did they make these beads? Were they merely ornamental, or did they hold a deeper, more mysterious purpose? Could these simple pieces of jewelry actually capture the very essence of the Nile, the life force of Egypt itself? It's a thought that pulls us into the past, into a time when the very color and glow of a bead could mean something far greater than we might imagine. The blue faience beads were often found in tombs, suggesting that they held significance not just in life, but also in the journey to the afterlife. Their bright, almost electric blue color was a striking contrast to the desert sands and the earthy tones of everyday life. In a world where the Nile River was the lifeblood of Egypt, providing water, transportation, and fertile soil for crops, these beads might have symbolized the essence of that great river, its vibrant life force flowing through everything, sustaining not only the people but their very souls. The question then becomes, could these glowing beads be more than just beautiful objects? Could they represent a spiritual connection, a symbolic link to the power of the Nile itself? Was it possible that by wearing these beads, the ancient Egyptians believed they were somehow drawing the river's energy into themselves, capturing a piece of its strength to carry with them into the afterlife? It's easy to see how this idea might sound strange or far-fetched. After all, today when we wear jewelry, we often think of it as nothing more than decoration, a way to express our personal style or commemorate a special event. A simple necklace or bracelet might be meaningful, but not in the way that these ancient beads were. To the people of ancient Egypt, however, the very materials they used to create their jewelry were often infused with symbolic meaning. The color blue, for example, was deeply connected to the concept of life and the divine. It was the color of the heavens and the Nile, two sources of life and sustenance. When the Egyptians created blue faience, they were not simply making jewelry. They were creating something that, in their minds, had the potential to connect them with the life-giving forces of the world around them. Imagine wearing something today that you believe connects you to something larger, something that brings strength and protection. Maybe you carry a lucky charm, or wear a piece of jewelry that has sentimental value. In these small objects, we often place our hopes and our desires for good fortune or safety. We might even believe that these items offer us a sense of comfort or guidance, something that will help us navigate the uncertain terrain of life. It's not that different from the ancient Egyptians and their blue faience beads. For them, these Beads may have been seen as more than just decorative items. They were powerful symbols of life and energy, almost like a personal connection to the Nile itself. They believed that the river was the source of all life, and by incorporating its color and essence into their jewelry, they were bringing that life force into their daily lives, or even into their journey beyond. Now consider how we, too, connect with the world around us through symbols. For example, when we face challenges in life, many of us turn to things that hold personal meaning, whether it's a piece of jewelry, a ritual, or even a memory. These symbols become anchors, giving us comfort or strength in moments of uncertainty. Perhaps you've worn a certain piece of clothing for an important event, or held onto an object that reminded you of a loved one during a difficult time. These items might not have any intrinsic power, but to us, they feel powerful because of the emotions and memories they carry. In much the same way, the blue faience beads held emotional and spiritual significance for the ancient Egyptians. The beads were not just objects, they were tokens of connection, reminders of the divine energy of the Nile that sustained them. As we dive deeper into this idea, it's fascinating to consider the relationship between objects and meaning. In the case of these beads, their symbolism likely had a profound impact on the people who wore them. But could the power of these beads have been more than just symbolic? Could they have had a physical effect on the people who wore them? The blue color of the faience itself, shiny and radiant, might have been designed to reflect the shimmering, life-giving qualities of the Nile. In a sense, wearing these beads could have felt like wearing a piece of the river's power itself, as though the wearer could draw from that energy whenever needed. The glowing quality of the beads might have made them appear almost alive, adding to their allure and mystique. This brings us back to the human experience of seeking meaning in the objects we surround ourselves with. Whether it's a lucky charm, a gift from a loved one, or a piece of clothing that gives us confidence, these objects have a way of making us feel connected to something larger than ourselves. In many ways, they serve as anchors during moments of uncertainty, grounding us when the world feels out of control. Similarly, the blue faience beads were not just items of beauty. They were a way for the ancient Egyptians to connect to the larger forces of nature, to the river that nourished their civilization, and to the mysteries of the afterlife. It's interesting to think about how this connection to objects and symbols is not confined to ancient times. In our modern world, we continue to find meaning in the things we wear, the items we keep, and the rituals we follow. Whether it's carrying a family heirloom or performing a daily routine that brings a sense of calm, these practices and objects connect us to something deeper, whether it's our ancestors, our beliefs, or the energy we seek to attract. In a way, we are all still playing a part in a much larger story, just as the ancient Egyptians did with their blue faience beads. The beads may have been small, but they held great power in their symbolism, a reminder of how even the smallest things can carry immense meaning. As you reflect on this, think about the objects in your own life. Do you have something that holds personal significance? Something that gives you strength or comfort? Perhaps it's a piece of jewelry, a photograph, or even a small trinket. How does it make you feel when you hold it or look at it? In those moments, do you feel a connection to something larger? Something that transcends the ordinary world around you? Just as the ancient Egyptians found meaning in their blue faience beads, so too do we find meaning in the objects that populate our lives, and in the connections they help us forge with the world. Oracular dream chambers. Imagine stepping into a dark, quiet space, a place designed solely for one purpose, to receive answers from your dreams. This wasn't a place for sleep, not just rest, but a sacred temple where the silence of the night held the promise of revelation. People once believed that dreams could offer guidance, insight, and even answers to the most profound questions of life. In ancient cultures, special chambers were carved into stone or constructed in sacred spaces meant specifically for those seeking wisdom from their dreams. Could it be that these oracular dream chambers weren't just places for sleep, but for something deeper, something more mystical? Were they really designed to connect the dreamer with divine knowledge? A space where the boundary between the waking world and the world of dreams became thin, where answers might be whispered by the night itself? The idea of seeking answers through dreams is not as strange as it might seem at first. Many cultures, including the ancient Egyptians and Greeks, built temples dedicated to sleep, where priests or ordinary people would enter, seeking wisdom from the dreams that would come to them during the night. In these sacred chambers, the act of dreaming was not just a personal experience. It was seen as a sacred event, a direct link between the human soul and the divine. People would lie down in complete silence and wait for visions or messages to come through their dreams, hoping for guidance on everything from health to relationships and even matters of state. But what makes this even more intriguing is that this wasn't just superstition. It was part of a deeply ingrained belief system, a practice that was accepted, almost revered, by the societies of the time. Could there be something to this idea? If we pause and think about our own experiences, many of us have had moments when a dream felt more than just random images or fleeting thoughts. Perhaps you've had a dream that left you with a strong feeling, an emotion that stayed with you, even after you woke up. Maybe it was a dream about a person, an event, or a situation, and the next day, it seemed as if the dream had somehow predicted or prepared you for what was to come. This sense of connection between the dream world and the waking world is something many of us have experienced even in modern times. Could it be that the ancient seekers, those who slept in these oracular chambers, were tapping into something deeper, a sense of knowing that we all have access to, but sometimes cannot fully understand? Think about the times in your own life when you've been at a crossroads, facing a decision, or perhaps feeling uncertain about the path ahead. In those moments, have you ever wished for a clear answer, a sign that would point you in the right direction? The idea of finding that answer in a dream is something we can all relate to. After all, dreams often present us with situations that challenge our beliefs, bring up hidden emotions, or offer glimpses into our subconscious minds. It's no wonder that ancient cultures would have believed dreams were a way to tap into a higher source of wisdom, a connection to something beyond the ordinary, everyday world. We can also think of this in terms of modern psychological theories. Many psychologists believe that dreams are a way for our minds to process emotions, solve problems, and work through issues that we might not be fully aware of while awake. This process is often referred to as dream therapy, where people analyze their dreams to uncover hidden thoughts and feelings. So while we might not have temples dedicated to oracular dreaming today, the process of seeking answers from our dreams is still something we do on a personal level. It's almost as if our minds, while we sleep, are working overtime to help us make sense of the world around us, to help us find peace, clarity, and direction. Now let's imagine stepping into one of these ancient dream chambers. The environment is quiet, perhaps dimly lit, with the scent of incense or oils filling the air. You lie down on a simple mat, your mind quiet, the world outside slowly fading away. In the silence, you are invited to listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. In this sacred space, you wait for the dream to come. You are open, vulnerable, and ready to receive whatever guidance the dream world might have to offer. The chamber itself is designed to help you connect with a deeper part of yourself, to quiet the noise of the outside world so that you can hear the wisdom your dreams may hold. It's not just a matter of sleeping, it's about creating the conditions for meaningful, transformative experiences. Now, compare this to modern life. How often do we create the space for silence, for quiet reflection, for simply being present with ourselves? In our fast-paced world, it can be difficult to find moments of stillness. We rush from task to task, constantly distracted by the noise of technology and the demands of everyday life. Yet, when we do take the time to slow down, to be still, it's often in those quiet moments that we find clarity. Whether it's in meditation, a walk in nature, or simply sitting in silence, we know that quiet can be a powerful tool for understanding ourselves and the world around us. This brings us to a larger question. What are we seeking when we look for answers in dreams? It's not just about solving problems, but about finding a deeper connection to ourselves and to the world we live in. The ancient dream temples weren't just places for rest. They were places for transformation. They were built with the belief that sleep could be a gateway to wisdom, a space where the mind could open to new insights and perspectives. In this way, the practice of seeking answers through dreams is both ancient and modern, a timeless way of connecting with the deeper parts of our consciousness. As we reflect on this idea, consider the role of dreams in your own life. Have you ever had a dream that felt meaningful, even if you couldn't quite explain why? Do you ever find yourself turning to your dreams for guidance or comfort in times of uncertainty? The truth is, we all have a connection to something deeper within ourselves, something that we may not fully understand. Just like the ancient seekers in their oracular dream chambers, we too have the ability to connect with that inner wisdom, whether it comes through dreams, intuition, or moments of quiet reflection. In the end, the oracular dream chambers remind us that there is wisdom all around us, and sometimes the answers we seek are not found through action, but through stillness. Whether through dreams or quiet moments of reflection, we have the capacity to access a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And perhaps, just as the ancients believed, it's in these moments of silence that we are most able to hear the whispers of wisdom that guide us on our journey. So, as you continue on your own path, consider giving yourself the space to dream, to reflect, and to listen, to the world, to your heart, and to the wisdom that may be waiting for you in the quiet. Chariot, tomb reliefs. Imagine walking into a room where the walls tell stories, not in words, but in images carved into stone. These images show mighty war chariots, drawn by strong horses, racing through vast desert landscapes. They capture the intensity of battle, the force of the warriors, and the chaos of war. But here's the mysterious part. These aren't scenes from the battlefield. They are scenes from tombs. Carved reliefs in ancient tombs, showing chariots, horses, and warriors, raise a question that has intrigued many for centuries. Were these battles real, fought on the sands of ancient deserts, or were they part of a myth? An idealized version of the past meant to symbolize something deeper? The idea that these reliefs, often found in burial sites, could be more than just depictions of past wars is fascinating. At first glance, it seems obvious. They must have been meant to commemorate the victories of ancient kings, queens, and warriors, right? The chariot, after all, was a symbol of power, of movement, and of battle. Yet, when we step back and consider the role of art in these ancient cultures, we begin to realize that these images might not be as straightforward as they appear. They might not simply be depictions of battles fought and won. They could also be a way of connecting the living to the spiritual world, a means of ensuring that the warrior's strength and bravery would continue in the afterlife. It's almost like when we watch movies today, like superhero films or historical dramas, where the lines between reality and myth can blur. We know these stories aren't real, but we still feel a deep connection to them, don't we? There's something within us that is moved by the portrayal of struggle, of victory, and of courage. The ancient tomb reliefs might have served a similar purpose, bringing the mythic world into the reality of the tomb, creating a space where the warrior's spirit could continue to live on, fighting battles even after death. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That the courage and the strength of those who came before us are still with us, still active in some way, even after they've passed on. If you think about it, we all have some version of this in our own lives. How many times have we heard stories of people who have overcome great challenges only to be remembered long after they've gone? The stories of our ancestors, whether through family tales, national histories, or personal recollections, continue to shape who we are. In a sense, the warriors depicted in the tombs are no different. They are remembered not just for their physical victories, but for the ideals and values they represented. We can see this in the way we honor our own heroes, whether through monuments, memorials, or even in the stories we tell about them. These tomb reliefs were a way of keeping those ideals alive, of ensuring that the values they embodied, strength, courage, and resilience, would endure long after the physical warriors were gone. And then, there's the desert itself, the vast, open landscape that serves as the backdrop for these chariot scenes. The desert is a powerful symbol in many cultures. It's both a harsh, unforgiving place and a place of great beauty and mystery. It's a place where life is fragile and survival is uncertain. In ancient times, it was also a place where many battles were fought and many stories of struggle and triumph were born. But the desert also holds an element of the unknown. It's a place where reality and myth can merge, where the lines between the living and the dead might seem to blur. Perhaps that's why these chariot tomb reliefs resonate so deeply with us. They remind us of the ways in which the past and the present, the real and the imagined, are intertwined. They challenge us to think about what is truly real and what might just be a way of understanding something greater than ourselves. Think about a time when you faced a challenge. It could be something as simple as an exam, a difficult conversation, or something more serious, like a personal struggle. How did you get through it? Often we find strength not just in the situation itself, but in the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, about our own resilience and ability to persevere. These stories help us make sense of our lives. They give us context, meaning, and purpose. In a way, the chariot tomb reliefs serve a similar purpose. They aren't just records of history. They are stories that help us understand who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for. The warriors in these tombs might not have actually fought every battle depicted in the reliefs, but the stories of those battles help create a sense of continuity, a bridge between the past and the present. This brings us to the deeper themes that the chariot tomb reliefs touch on. What do these images tell us about the cultures that created them, and what do they tell us about ourselves? For one, they speak to the importance of remembering the past, of honoring those who came before us, and of finding meaning in the stories we tell. They also raise questions about the nature of reality. How much of what we think we know is shaped by the myths, the symbols, and the stories we inherit? The reliefs in the tombs are a reminder that the way we perceive the world is often influenced by the narratives we carry with us. In modern times, this idea is especially relevant as we navigate the world of technology and artificial intelligence. As we create more and more sophisticated machines, there's a growing question about how much of our humanity will remain intact. Are we simply telling ourselves new stories about what it means to be human? Or are we finding new ways to tap into the deeper aspects of who we are? The reliefs in the tombs may have been created by people who understood that there is something timeless and universal about the human experience. We may live in a very different world today, but the stories we tell about ourselves, about our struggles, and about our triumphs are still deeply important. As we reflect on these ancient chariot tomb reliefs, we are reminded that the past is not just a series of events. It's a collection of stories, myths, and symbols that help shape who we are and how we understand the world, whether they were meant to commemorate real battles or to create a mythic narrative of victory. These carvings hold a deeper truth. The stories we tell are powerful, and they shape the way we see ourselves and the world around us. Just as the ancient warriors live on in the reliefs, so too do the stories of our own lives continue to shape the future. In the end, perhaps these chariot tomb reliefs, with their images of war, victory, and myth, are a reminder that the greatest battles are not always fought on the sands of the desert. Sometimes they are fought in the stories we create, in the ways we choose to remember the past, and in the values we pass down to future generations. Just as the ancient warriors live on in these carvings, so too do the lessons of their courage, their strength, and their resilience. Perfume Vase Secrets. Imagine stepping into a quiet, dimly lit room, the air filled with the delicate fragrance of something ancient. The scent seems almost alive, weaving through the air, carrying with it a sense of mystery and timelessness. Now picture an ornate vase, its smooth surface catching the light as it sits quietly in the corner of the room. Inside, the vase holds something precious, a fragrant oil, carefully crafted, possibly thousands of years old. It's easy to think of such scents as simple luxuries, used to please the senses. But in ancient times, these scents might have had a far deeper significance. What if the perfume oils in these vases were not just for pleasure, but for something far more sacred? Could these fragrances have been more than just a means of beautifying the space? Could they have carried prayers, messages or intentions to gods far beyond the reach of human hands. The idea that scent could carry a deeper spiritual purpose is a thought that invites us to pause and reflect. Think about the way a particular fragrance can instantly transport us to a memory or a place. It's as though a scent has the power to connect us to something greater than the physical world, something intangible. In ancient cultures, this idea was deeply ingrained. Scents weren't just about luxury or beauty. They were thought to have the power to connect the earthly realm to the divine. They weren't just fragrances, they were offerings, prayers in liquid form, sent to gods as symbols of devotion, hope, and gratitude. These scented oils might have been stored in vases not merely for their pleasing aroma, but for the purpose of carrying those prayers to the gods who were believed to reside far away, beyond the reach of human sight. It's a concept that we can relate to even in our modern lives. Think about the ways in which we express our own hopes, fears, and desires. In today's world, we use a variety of methods to communicate with others, from words to images, and even music. But in ancient times, scent was an equally powerful way of expressing something deeper. Have you ever noticed how the smell of something familiar can bring back a rush of emotions or memories? Maybe it's the scent of a loved one's perfume, or the smell of a place that holds deep significance for you. Scents, in a way, are bridges to our past, to our emotions, and to the larger, unseen forces that shape our lives. Ancient civilizations understood this power, and they used fragrances not just to please their senses, but to send messages beyond the human realm. Consider a simple example from everyday life. When you light a candle in your home, you might be doing more than just creating a pleasant atmosphere. You might be lighting that candle as a form of self-care, to calm your mind, or to signal the beginning of a ritual. For many, scents like lavender or sandalwood are used to promote relaxation and mental clarity. There's a psychological connection between scent and well-being, one that has been acknowledged for centuries. The ancients understood this connection and elevated it to a spiritual practice. They believed that by offering fragrant oils to the gods, they could influence events, seek blessings, or express their gratitude. The perfume vases, filled with oils, were more than just decorative objects. They were conduits of prayer, a way to reach the divine. This connection between scent and spirituality is a reminder of how, throughout history, people have sought ways to bridge the gap between the known and the unknown. In ancient times, this gap was believed to be filled with gods, spirits, and forces that could influence the course of human life. But how did one communicate with these unseen beings? Through words, yes, but also through rituals. Rituals that involved offering something valuable. And what could be more valuable than the essence of a flower, a herb, or a resin, carefully distilled into oil and presented in the most beautiful and sacred form? It's not hard to imagine how such offerings could carry with them a sense of reverence and a deep desire to connect with something greater than oneself, just as we find meaning in our rituals today, whether it's a daily cup of tea, a moment of reflection before a busy day, or lighting a candle during a difficult time. The ancients found deep significance in their own rituals. Scents, for them, were a way of drawing closer to the divine, of making the invisible visible, and of sending their hopes and prayers into the universe. This was not just a matter of offering something for the sake of beauty or personal pleasure. It was a way of participating in something larger than themselves. It was about creating a connection with the unseen, with the forces they believed governed their lives. This idea of offering something personal and meaningful to connect with something beyond our comprehension is still relevant today. Think about the way we seek connection with others in our daily lives. We send messages, we make offerings of our time and energy, and we seek out ways to communicate with those who are important to us. In a sense, these ancient perfume vases remind us that our own attempts to reach out, to communicate, to connect, to understand, are part of a long human tradition. Whether through words, actions, or offerings, we've always sought to bridge the gap between our world and the mysteries that lie beyond. When we look at these perfume vases today, we might wonder about the lives of those who created them. Were they thinking about the gods when they crafted the vases and filled them with oils? Or were they simply fulfilling a cultural tradition? Were they hoping for divine favor? Or were they participating in a ritual that was simply a part of daily life? The answer is probably a bit of both. For ancient civilizations, rituals and symbols were woven into the fabric of life. The act of offering a scent to the gods might have been both a personal wish and a communal tradition, shared by everyone in the society. As we reflect on this, we can see that the idea of sending prayers or messages through scent isn't confined to the past. It's something that still resonates with us today in ways both large and small. Whether we're lighting a candle, wearing a particular fragrance, or using essential oils for healing, we're still using scent as a way to influence our environment and connect with deeper parts of ourselves. In that sense, the perfume vases of the past remind us that our own rituals, no matter how small, are part of a larger tradition of seeking meaning and connection. They invite us to think about the ways we communicate with the world around us, and whether those communications, whether with others, with nature, or with something divine, are as meaningful as we want them to be. Just as the ancient perfume vases were filled with oils to send prayers to the gods, we too can fill our lives with intention. Whether through scent, words, or actions, we can create rituals that help us connect with something greater, something that transcends the everyday struggles and joys of life. It's a reminder that, even in the smallest of gestures, there is potential for something profound, something that can carry our hopes, our prayers, and our deepest wishes into the world. Red Sea trade. Imagine standing at the edge of the vast Red Sea, looking out over the water. The sun is beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the surface, and the air is thick with the scent of salt and spice. Ships, large and small, are drifting gently on the waves, their sails catching the last breath of daylight. It's hard to imagine how these ancient vessels, with no motors or modern navigation, managed to sail across such vast distances. But the Egyptians did it. Somehow they crossed oceans, explored lands beyond the horizon, and returned with treasures from faraway places. Spices, gold, and other exotic goods that seemed almost too mysterious to believe. How far did these Egyptian ships truly roam? The question seems simple, but the answer is wrapped in layers of history, mystery, and wonder. The idea that the Egyptians, with their advanced knowledge of the stars, the winds, and the seas, could have sailed as far as we now know, is both awe-inspiring and puzzling. The ancient world we often think of as small, contained, and distant from the vastness we know today. But in truth, the Egyptians, with their incredible shipbuilding skills and trading networks, were far more connected to the rest of the world than we might have imagined. They were not just trading spices and gold with nearby lands. They were reaching out to distant shores, bringing back treasures from places that we often think of as completely separate from their world. Imagine, for example, the way you might feel if you were to leave your hometown, cross a border, and discover an entirely new world. A place where the people, the food, and the way of life are unlike anything you've ever experienced. You would be filled with excitement, curiosity, and perhaps a little fear. But you would also want to bring something back, a story, a gift, a new discovery, to share with those at home. That is essentially what the Egyptians were doing, traveling far from their known world, and returning with exotic goods that would have seemed magical to those who had never seen them. It's fascinating to think about how the Egyptians might have perceived the lands they encountered during these long voyages. Perhaps they saw spices like frankincense or myrrh as gifts from the gods, scents that could be burned in temples to honor the divine. Perhaps the gold they brought back was not just a symbol of wealth, but a material that connected them to the very forces of nature, shining, eternal, and capable of bringing power to whoever possessed it. These goods weren't just valuable, in a material sense. They were symbols of something far greater, something that touched on the mysteries of life and the afterlife. In our own lives, we often seek out new experiences, new places, new people, and new ideas. This urge to explore, to step outside of our familiar world, is deeply ingrained in us. Think about the way a new relationship can feel like opening a door to a completely different reality. or how traveling to a new place can feel like a journey into a different universe, where everything is strange, and yet there is something that calls to you. It's that same curiosity, that desire for connection and discovery that drove the Egyptians to sail beyond the horizon, to places they could only imagine in their dreams. The idea of long-distance trade in the ancient world might seem distant from us today. After all, in our modern lives, we are so accustomed to instant communication, fast travel, and global connections. But the truth is, the Egyptians were doing something that many of us still dream of doing. They were bridging vast distances to connect with others, to exchange knowledge and goods, and to share the beauty and wonder of their world with others. Their trade routes were the highways of their time, and they were an essential part of how civilizations grew and flourished. The exchange of goods, spices, gold, rare woods, was not just about material wealth. It was about creating a network of relationships, building bridges between cultures, and spreading ideas. Think about your own experiences with trade, whether it's shopping for something rare or exchanging gifts with a friend. There's a kind of excitement that comes with the exchange, isn't there? The excitement of finding something new, of receiving something that is valuable and unexpected. The Egyptians felt that excitement too, but on a far grander scale. They were receiving spices and incense from the land of Punt, exotic woods from the forests of Africa, and gold from distant places. But just as we sometimes feel a sense of mystery and awe when we acquire something new and unknown, the Egyptians were no doubt filled with wonder when they brought home these precious treasures from distant lands. This idea of trade and exploration touches on something much deeper than just the exchange of goods. It speaks to our innate desire to understand the world, to connect with others, and to uncover the unknown. The Egyptians were not just traders, they were explorers, adventurers, and seekers of knowledge. They sought to understand the world beyond their borders, to reach out to distant lands and learn from those who lived there. In that sense, their voyages were not unlike our own journeys of discovery, whether through travel, reading, or simply talking to someone from a different background. In the same way that ancient Egyptian ships carried goods and ideas across vast distances, our own minds and hearts carry thoughts and feelings to places far beyond our own experiences. We seek out new ideas, new perspectives, and new ways of thinking in much the same way that the Egyptians sought out new lands and goods. And just as their trade routes connected civilizations and brought about the exchange of ideas, so too do our conversations, travels, and experiences create connections between us and the larger world. The Egyptians' journeys across the Red Sea were more than just economic endeavors. They were part of a larger human story, a story of curiosity, exploration, and the desire to make sense of the world. They were not just seeking wealth in the form of gold and spices. They were seeking knowledge, connection, and understanding. And in that sense, their voyages were much like our own daily journeys. Whether we're traveling to new places or seeking new insights about ourselves and the world around us, as we reflect on the journeys of the ancient Egyptians, we might ask ourselves, how far are we willing to go to explore the unknown? How far are we willing to sail, metaphorically, to discover something new, to learn from others, and to bring back something of value to our own world? Just as the Egyptians sailed across the Red Sea in search of new opportunities, we too can embark on our own journeys of discovery, seeking out new experiences and connections that expand our understanding and enrich our lives. Lost King's identity. Imagine a grand, towering structure covered in intricate carvings and ancient writings, only to find that one name is missing, erased as if it never existed. In the midst of the stone reliefs and majestic depictions, there's one figure who has vanished from history. No one knows who they were, and their story has been wiped from the walls, leaving behind only traces of a once great presence. This mysterious figure is the Lost King, whose identity remains a puzzle, shrouded in time. How could someone so powerful, so influential, vanish from history in such an astonishing way? The idea of a king whose name has been erased is both fascinating and unsettling. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to live in a time when everything around you, your name, your legacy, your story, was recorded and remembered by those who came after you. Everything you did, every decision you made, was carved into stone for future generations to see. But then, somehow, a king's name is deliberately erased. It's almost as if the king's very existence was deemed unworthy of being remembered. The reasons behind such an erasure are as mysterious as the figure itself. Was it an act of punishment, a result of rebellion, or simply the passage of time that wiped away their name? It's a question that lingers in the air, one that invites speculation and curiosity. Throughout history, there have been instances where rulers and leaders sought to erase the legacies of their predecessors, often as a way to reshape their own power or to distance themselves from unwanted associations. In ancient Egypt, for example, rulers sometimes attempted to erase the names and monuments of kings they disapproved of. But the question remains, how far did this act of erasure go? Was it a political move, an attempt to control the past, or something more profound? An effort to rewrite the story of a civilization? Now, imagine how this erasure might have felt to those living at the time. For the people, this lost king may have represented a forgotten chapter of their lives, a ruler whose reign, whether good or bad, was suddenly swept from the collective memory. It's not unlike how we sometimes forget parts of our own past. Memories of old friends, places we once visited, or events that once seemed so important. Over time, these memories fade, and they are replaced by new ones. But unlike our personal memories, the erasure of a king's name was a deliberate act, something done to alter the very fabric of history. But what does this erasure of identity tell us about the way history is written and remembered? It raises questions about how we choose to remember the past and how much of it is shaped by those in power. If a king's name could be erased from history, what does that say about the stories we tell ourselves? How many stories have been lost, altered, or forgotten because they didn't fit the narrative of the time? Just as we sometimes forget parts of our own personal histories, entire chapters of civilizations can be lost in the tides of time, erased by forces beyond our control. In our own world, we often see how the past can be reinterpreted or forgotten. For instance, think about how certain events or figures may be overlooked in history books, or how narratives are shaped by the perspectives of those who write them. The erasure of a king's identity invites us to reflect on the fragility of memory and history. It reminds us that the stories we know, the people we remember, and the events we celebrate are often those that have been preserved by the choices of others. In everyday life, we experience similar moments of erasure. There are moments and people who fade from our memories, not because they were less important, but because time and circumstances change how we relate to them. Perhaps a place you once loved, or a friend you once knew, slips away in your thoughts. As life moves forward, it's a natural part of being human, the shifting of focus and priorities. But unlike our personal experiences, when history forgets someone important, like a lost king, it leaves behind a kind of emptiness, an unanswered question about who they were and why they were forgotten. The lost king's identity may never be fully uncovered, yet in many ways their absence speaks as loudly as their presence would have. It reminds us that history is not just about what is remembered, but also about what is lost and left behind. It challenges us to think about how we shape our own legacies and how our stories will be told in the future. Will we be remembered for the things we did, or will we be erased, forgotten, lost to time? Just like the mysterious king who vanishes. From history, we all leave behind traces of ourselves in the world, some visible and some hidden. Perhaps, in the grand sweep of time, only a few will remember our names, and others may be erased altogether. But it's important to remember that the act of erasure, like the passage of time itself, is not permanent. The absence of a name can be as telling as its presence, and sometimes even the most forgotten stories have a way of resurfacing, bringing with them the truth that had long been buried. As we reflect on this lost king, it's worth considering the larger themes of legacy, memory, and the passage of time. In the end, the stories we tell, the names we remember, and the people we honor are shaped by the choices we make today. Just as the king's name was erased, we too have the power to shape our own stories. What will you leave behind? What will be remembered and what will fade away, lost to the sands of time? It's a question that touches all of us, reminding us that our actions today can echo in the future, just as the whispers of forgotten kings still linger in the ruins of the past. As we ponder the mystery of the lost king and the story's history may have left behind, we invite you to reflect on your own legacy. What story will you leave for future generations? Share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think about the power of memory, history, and the stories that shape our world.